I mean, oh, sorry, I should have
Hello!
said that.
I don't think you caught that.
That was good. So it's my turn to screw up this today.
It was close. That was close.
It was in a very close. That was very close.
Good evening. Oh, that was awesome.
Yeah, iffy one. That's
Yeah.
I should not talk about my.
Hopefully, I didn't hurt anyone's eardrums out there.
Be having jokes before we start here. Yeah.
Bum, bum, bum. Thickum. It's like
You've done all
dot the I's and cross the T's tonight. So
Yeah. You've done all the
I
you
tried.
updated the title and all that stuff.
everything, yep.
Yeah.
First to arrive, in comes Malden.
Yay. Hello.
Yeah, hello.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you guys. I'll have to decide where I want to put it.
Maybe I have to decide where you put the window and the camera.
I know.
Yeah.
Last time I had it here.
Yeah, because I've seen that wonderful. Is that like a real fire or is it just a TV?
It's an electric fireplace.
That's awesome.
It looks fantastic.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Let's see, there's this view and then there's this view.
Oh yeah, now I've seen it. Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Whichever one you want, man.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't care. I guess we'll stick to the fire.
Yeah, fire view's cool.
Yeah.
What's up, Tim? Enoch. Hey, up. We're starting to roll in here.
PC.
You in contact with Rick, Dennis?
Yeah, I sent him the link.
Okay.
By
Hey,
Facebook.
491 Phantom. We are in good. We're in good shape, everyone. Hey, Snicken. I talked to Eric via Facebook Messenger, and he's good to go. So, you know, Eric will pop in at any point. So,
Alright, good deal.
that's a good thing. So we got here. Hey Tim, thanks for the resub, Enoch. Appreciate it. Getting cranked up here.
Where are my Zoom settings?
Lower left-hand corner, right on Zoom. Video.
Just those tiny little buttons on the mute.
It's not
button,
following
stuff
my system settings, of course. Just like
No,
Skype, it ignores.
Exactly. It's
Yes.
it ignores.
Hey David.
Has its own little thingies.
Of course it does. Why would it? Yes. They do their own things. Of course they do. Awesome. I'm pushing my all my sponsors for some new ads after GaryCon, so note that, please. Okay.
The hour clocks went forwards last night.
Well,
But
Oh, you switched to
in
so-
England,
hey, Dale.
their clocks go forward next week
Well, most of Europe is 2 weeks.
So what? He's an hour off.
or 2 weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
He just asked me when we move our clocks forward. And I said,
We already.
that was last night.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
most
2
of
weeks, I
Europe-
think. Yeah,
I
you're
think,
right.
yeah,
Yeah,
some years it's 1 week, some years it's 2 weeks. It varies.
yeah. Okay, PC, really? Come on. I know you want attention.
What was that?
Thank you.
There we
What's
go.
up, Scott?
Ken signing. Yeah.
Okay, PC, come on.
So Ken name's PC.
PISI. Yeah, some of my students, when I say PC, they think I'm saying the letters PC like personal computer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Player character or something. So yeah.
yeah, or PCO, or yeah, player character.
Yeah.
But no, it's PISI, which is Romanian for kitty. So Kitty's name is Kitty. Yeah, because she's a Romanian. She only speaks Romanian.
Oh, okay. So you don't speak Romanian.
Oh, I don't speak Romanian. That's why she never listens to me.
It's like my dog Minnie, when I tried to, she was like 7 years old when I moved here, and I tried to speak Swedish to her. She just looked at me like, what are you saying? It's like, it was so confusing at first, but she really gave me that, like, she didn't understand me one bit. Then I tried to speak English, then she was fine. Yeah. We got Starship Warden video. That's really cool. That video.
Yeah, still available. One of the first, that leather-bound Starship Warden was one of the first things that went for the. Anyone here from old school D&D?
I think there are a couple of people
Death
here
Bunny.
from old school D&D. Yeah.
Well, Knights. So Walt, right? Walt's old school D&D. Walt normally comes on, and he has a different name he comes under.
Oh, you mean the channel old school?
Yeah, channel
Yeah.
old school D&D, which is
Yeah.
Walt's. Yep. Hey, Christoph, what's up, man?
Good to see you.
This will be a good discussion tonight.
Yeah.
Here it comes for the first time ever.
Hey, there he is.
You can't see me. We're in ads right ads
Hello.
right now.
Welcome.
Hello.
How's it going?
Oh, it works.
It does. It works really well.
It works. Yes, we got our
That was a
Famous
shock.
last-
A shock. I thought I had an extra hour then.
Oh my gosh, isn't that crazy? Whew.
Famous last words until it all goes down, right?
Yeah.
It works.
We're gonna get live here very shortly.
Yeah. But Zoom
Nice.
is usually very stable.
Yes.
But I
we got-
shouldn't say that. That's
Yes, don't curse it,
Don't-
Anna.
yeah.
We got I got a pro version. So
Oh
it's
yeah,
okay,
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
You're crystal clear. We come on a few minutes early. No one's going to complain tonight. I guarantee it. Right, audience?
Yeah, there's a little bit more of a
my-
delay today than there was last time we spoke, Dennis.
It's a little bit more what?
There's more of a delay. It's taking maybe a couple of seconds for me to get through to you.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, there is a bit of a delay.
Really? I have no delay on my end at all, Rick and Dennis. I mean, you're
Yeah.
instant when you're talking.
Yeah, no, same with me and you, but I guess that transatlantic cable is.
Should be more than like a couple of
Yeah.
seconds.
I
I reckon it's our local service provider.
Might be. Yeah.
Could be.
Crystal, I mean, you're all instantaneous for me. And it should translate over when it gets embedded in the Twitch pretty well. So it works very well with it. So, Eric,
If you want to disconnect, reconnect, see if.
you can't do that
See
if
if
you so
that's-
choose. Where we got like 2 minutes, 3 minutes.
So
At any point you have an issue, it's not a problem. Well, that's good, Worms. Well, you don't have to miss the live show tonight. That's awesome. That is fantastic. Not wait for this discussion.
changing your clocks though.
I was like, well, Dennis just brought it up 10 minutes ago. I'm like,
Damn.
yeah, daylight savings time. I lost that hour last night.
Oh well.
Same thing with you, Dennis, in Canada, same?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All of North America switches at the same time.
Tonight. Gonna be a fantastic discussion.
Windows ready here.
You good? There.
I think so.
I'm monitoring my Facebook Messenger for Eric. He's got all the information in the code and all that. He just played the fundraiser game, so he's good.
Well, he's been on a whole bunch of times.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have no mods on right now. You know, and so my mods are all missing in action. So let me get the word out. One of the mods will come on and get to it. So here we go. Let's go live here. We're 3 minutes early.
What was happening?
There you
Why-
go.
why
There
were
you
you
go.
looking-
Thank you, mate. We had a spammer on, one of those buy follower spammers. Good evening, everyone. I'm Jay, aka Lord Gazumba. What a great discussion tonight. With me, my partner in crime, Anna B. Meyer.
Hello.
And then we have 3 guests tonight. One is on his way. One who's been on multiple times for multiple discussions and who put this one together. The legendary Malden himself, Dennis Tetro.
With a little help from my friends. There's
Yes, with a little help, and thank you. And for the
Hello.
first time ever on our channel, really excited about this discussion.
I
Mr.
think
Rick
first time
Rose.
on any channel.
Any
Yes,
channel,
any
really?
channel. Yeah,
Wow.
yep.
Wow.
Yep. Yeah. Thank you for inviting me. Nobody ever asked me on anything.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Well,
That
actually,
is-
no. Dennis only managed to find me recently, didn't you?
Oh, that's
You
awesome.
know, well, we could talk about that later on. But I was trying to figure out when the first time I contacted you, and it was about 2005, I think.
Oh, yeah. Maybe even before then.
Yeah, because you had
Yeah, it's a
your
neat-
.ms email. I found
That's
some
right.
emails.
Yeah,
from-
yeah. Really ancient emails. Yeah.
I know. I found some old emails between us in 2008, and we were already chit-chatting about things at that point. So it's been a while, but
Yeah,
sporadic
yeah.
contact.
And joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yes, Rick, thank you. I can't wait to just delve into this stuff and hear all the details of in my opinion, the best reference book ever put out by TSR.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, absolutely. The box set's wonderful. The next man needs no introduction. The legendary Venarium Vord himself. They're still talking about that fundraiser, Eric. Eric Mona, everyone.
That was
Yep.
a great time. Had so much. Always have a great time at your table. Thank you so much.
Well, thank
That
you.
was fun.
And we hit $20,540. By the way, was the final.
Wow.
Raised,
Wow.
yeah, we raised for St. Jude, so it was a wonderful, wonderful fundraiser. And thank you for participating. And thank you for coming on. This is like. Let everyone, Dennis gets all the credit. I really didn't do much as far as organizing this. Dennis was like, I got this decision. I'm going to get Eric. I'm like, okay, Dennis, it's on you. So,
Oh man, I'm
Yeah, well
so
done.
excited.
Well done.
I'm so excited to be here. I'm thinking about the touchstones that made me a Greyhawk, super fan in the first place, and like the city of Greyhawk box set is right on that list. And you know, honestly, Rick, I don't know how aware you are of like how seriously we took this stuff. But like back in the day, we used to study that thing like it was the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Yeah.
And the idea, and it's not just you, but just like, you know, the evolution from a bunch of us like college kids talking on AOL or on Grey Talk chat, and just like where we've come from that to like, well, I don't know, we could just ask him. Yeah, it's just like pretty amazing. You know? And so just to even like sit here and just like, I promise I won't shut up the whole time, but I just like want to just sit
This is so much fun.
and listen. I'm so excited about this.
Absolutely.
And of course, you know, the links with Carl Sargent as well. Carl and I worked together for a long time. And we shared a flat as well for a little while.
Well,
Wow.
Dennis says something about the cottage. It's the cottage.
Yeah,
Is that it?
yeah,
Oh my
yeah.
gosh.
Yeah. No,
We had,
Rick has got some awesome stories, which I hope we're going to tease out of him working with Carl and working at TSR UK back in the day.
I was there just when Gary was removed and Don was removed from the UK, so it was quite a turbulent time.
Wow.
There were some loyalty tests going on. Let's put it that way.
Oh my gosh.
How many?
Yeah.
How big of staff were? How big was TSR UK at the time?
Well, TSR UK, they just as I joined, the entire creative team left. It was when they had Imagine Magazine. Imagine Magazine went. Don went over to see Lorraine, and Gary at the same time was unceremoniously dumped. There's a more story about that was quite interesting. And as they were flying to the States, we had the senior people coming the other way to come and take control of everything, and it was quite a turbulent time. So this was the problem. It's one of the reasons I left, is that most of the creative team were removed, and it was just a marketing exercise, or sorry, a sales exercise. So it was disappointing, but then we went on to write this, so it wasn't so bad, apparently.
So
yeah, there's a lot of stories there, I'm afraid.
we're talking late 80s, right? Do we have a specific year when all this went down?
Yeah. So I joined TSR in what, 85, 86.
Okay.
So 86,
Graduated high
87
school
was
at 85.
yeah, right, okay. Thank you. Showing my age now.
No.
So
We're there with you. Yep.
That is awesome. So,
yeah, I ended up on a floor all on my own there with all the empty. I was brought in to replace Mike Brunton, who went on to edit White Dwarf. So I sat there on the creative floor on my own, and Don's office with its private bathroom and bar was left under lock and key.
Until they emptied it.
Yeah, we tried.
so here's the question: How did this project come in your hands? Like was it Carl the lead on it, or was it?
No. It was very weird. Carl had been wanting to write for TSR for years and years and years, and they just wouldn't give him a break. He was writing for Warhammer.
Okay.
And he used to meet us every day, well, every Friday in the pub, and we became friends after a while and things. He was actually a consulting psychologist then at various institutions around Cambridge, and he was a very strange individual then who really couldn't look you in the eye or anything. He was very strange, let's put it that way. And he chain smoked constantly. You could smoke inside then, and so forth. He was desperate to write something, and they were odd at TSR Inc. They were saying, well, we're not sure. What we will do is we'll let the two of you write a project together, and we'll see how that works. So they said, oh, we've got a project for you. Could you write City of Greyhawk, please?
Just a second.
Just like that.
I said, yeah, okay, we'll do that. The
Wow.
difficult thing is, and I don't know how aware you are of this, is that obviously the only source that we could find were the books, the Gord the Road books, things like that, going back through every issue of a Dragon that we could find and so forth, and I'm trying to put whatever we could. But then when we wrote the Folk Feud and Factions book, the rest of the city hadn't been defined. So we wrote it without any map, without any of the other locations being written. So we had to make things up. This is one of the reasons, say, in some of the adventure cards, there aren't anything specific with the city in it, because we didn't know what the city was like. So
Wow.
we had to make a list of the locations that we were putting in there.
So there was no art order. You didn't
No.
have a sketch of the map, or
No.
wow.
We thought we knew what it looked like. We read the books and we assumed there was this big area around the wharves down by the river, and there would be this and that and so forth. The map was very different to what we imagined the place to be. I was a student of medieval history as well, and Egyptology and things like that. But I was expecting more of a medieval feel to it, and we ended up with this nice sort of green area with lots of trees and things. It wasn't the dirty,
Parkland.
smelly city that I imagined. But it meant that when we were writing little adventures and things, we couldn't be specific to the city because we couldn't say, "Oh, go down this street and that street into there," because we didn't know. So we had to sort of create things and then write all the locations that we put in there down and say, "Look, make sure you include these somewhere in the book."
Wow.
And
So the folks' book was written before the Gem of the Foundness book
Yeah.
was written.
Yes.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. It was written in 2 days. Actually, weirdly enough, I was talking to Dennis about this the other day. We
2
wrote it in
days?
2 days after
I thought you
Christmas.
meant
It was
2 days.
after
Oh my
Boxing
gosh.
Day.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like,
We'd worked out what we were going to write about and so forth, but Carl came down to see me, and weirdly enough, as I said to Dennis the other day, I actually met my future or current wife the day before we started writing this, and we're still together, funny enough. But we went and sat down, and the idea was we were going to write this, and we went and bought loads of jars of coffee, several bottles of Irish whiskey, and we sat down with my old Mac Plus. Remember the old single Mac Pluses things, and we took it in turns. One person would dictate, the other person would type.
Oh my god.
We just basically did it in 2 days because we knew what we wanted to write.
Do you remember what the original deadline was? It a crushing deadline originally?
Oh, it was. Yeah, it was. It
did
was
conceptual
yeah,
stuff and then banged it
yeah,
out at the end.
yeah. It had to be delivered in the early part of January.
And when was it assigned?
We got it in December.
3 weeks.
Yeah, basically,
on,
we just
yeah.
sat down. Well, we knew
Oh
our
my
stuff. I
gosh.
think
Yep.
we've done loads of stuff in Greyhawk before. We had rough ideas of what we wanted.
But this
in
is your
there.
first. This is your first time, right? First thing.
Yeah. For both of us for TSR, I think they gave him B1 at about the same time, sort of to be delivered a little bit later, because I know he was looking at the time, which was for D&D, which was it Knight's Harvest, King's Harvest or something,
B6.
or one of those. Yeah. B6. Sorry,
Yeah,
B6.
I think
Yeah,
it was.
it's one of those. So they did trust him with that, but I mean, this was Carl's thing. Carl loved stats. Carl, when we would actually do these things, it would be a case of, "Oh, don't write the stats in that. I want to do those." And so we would actually just, if we're defining a character there, he would be the one that would then sit down and write, "Oh yeah, all the stats for all of these," because that was his thing. This is, as I was mentioning to Dennis, one of the reasons that so many of the adventures and things that we did, and especially in the campaigns that we worked, tend to have a twist to them, because he knew the books off by heart. He had a photographic memory. He knew the stats for every monster. He would calculate. He was a mental calculator. I mean, he won the ICI chemistry prize at Cambridge at the age of 13. He could do the most ridiculous mental statistics in his head. And if you said, "Oh, there's 15 goblins," he'd be going, "Right, there's all of us, blah, blah, that's X number of hit points per round, blah, blah." And that was it. And that was how he would calculate things. So you had to throw a spanner at him. You had to change things round.
So
Rick, you mentioned that you'd done a bunch in Greyhawk. Does that mean like in your own home games?
Yeah, in our own campaigns and things. We were forced to go on to Forgotten Realms for a while because that was a project that was being developed,
Yeah.
which wasn't really working for us. I mean, the thing is, we were working in Greyhawk because that was the place that you
Better
worked
one.
in. Yeah, but it was around before Forgotten Realms. I mean, I started playing back in '77.
And from what I understand, what you've told me, Rick, is that Carl always refused to be the DM, right? You were always
he's never
the
DM.
for
Never.
So
the
you guys were in the
campaign.
same home group, basically.
Yeah, they
We were in
played
several
together.
groups. Yeah, we're in several groups as well. There were several up in Cambridge, and of course other ones that involve some of TSR staff as well as. I mean, the Cambridge ones, you've got to bear in mind, we're talking about other doctors of whatever, metaphysics, God knows. We're talking about senior lecturers there as well as students with student groups there. I attended a student group there once dressed in a full suit of plate mail, which absolutely terrified people walking around the road later on.
Was some of the material that you guys put into this project from those home
Yes.
campaigns? Like some of
Yes.
these are
Yeah.
your friends' characters. Anything
Yeah.
that you remember
Yeah.
in particular?
Welcome.
Yeah.
Derek.
Yeah, but more to, especially on in the little adventure cards at the end. I mean, they were most of those came out of much more involved adventures and things and scenarios that we ran in the campaigns. There's one, specifically. I was just trying to think. There's a sunken temple one in there. I think. Just going back to 30-something years. That was actually part of something much bigger. That was the one thing that really wound Carl up. It was one of the ones that absolutely terrified him, because the original version of that was very different and involved a temple that was underground that had been effectively, by various tectonics and things, that ended up in earthquakes. It ended up at 45 degrees with water pouring into it. And of course, he played female paladins in plate, walking along the edge of this with slippery bits and so forth. And they were, at that time, the Raphidians in the water would come out and grab individuals. Like the first thing they would go for was somebody with a torch or a light and pull them underwater. And of course, he was freaking out on that one. It's quite unusual. But that was in there. So most of these games, there's the one that somebody mentioned the other day with the fairy dragon. That came out of very early games. That was effectively a starter game for people. Most of the adventures there were played in much longer versions, and a lot of the characters there were from the games.
I think
the
you
game that we
mentioned the ogres. The ogres of the blinding light was another one of those.
Oh, that was
This is one of his moral dichotomies. He's playing a lawful good paladin. How's he going to deal with this? And it was deliberately done to wind Carl up. Let's put it that way.
So if Carl played a lot of female paladins, was the new goddess?
He made a lot of female characters, basically.
Okay.
It was quite weird. He tended to play female characters more than anything else. I don't know what.
Is the goddess Mayhaney or however you say
I
that?
love female paladins. I have all my Winchesters are all female paladins. So yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. Absolutely, that's awesome. So can I say something going back to the stats on this?
Yeah.
This book is so well balanced. When you look through it, I mean, you don't. Sorry, Ed, you don't have 30th level characters running around. Okay, as far like in Forgotten Realms, you have the Circle of Eight. You have some high level priests. I think the highest is only like 18th. You have guild masters. It works. You can just drop a campaign setting right in, and everything really flows as far as the balance of the characters. So I'm glad to hear that you said that he was a statistician and he knew the game up and down. You can tell. You can tell by the writing of the stats of these characters in here.
He loves stats. Absolutely loves stats.
It's fantastic. Yeah.
I never used to use a calculator in the office because I didn't need one. I just say it out loud and he'd do it for me like that.
Yes, Orchid, that is true. About only first edition. In first edition, only humans could be paladins. There was a little tweak in that. Cavalier paladins and Ars Arcana could be half elves as well. So it was half elves and humans back then. Different times, different eras.
Yeah.
No big deal.
This was one of the problems we had when we were given Greyhawk, of course, because second edition had just come out.
Yep.
Had just been released, and we were told that we had to produce Greyhawk second edition. Whereas, of course, all the existing materials before that are in the first edition. So there's some adjustments that we had to make there, and there's a lot of thinking about that. And of course, everyone's upset about Tharco at the moment. This was the thing that we loved at the time. Carl loved that because it was a mathematical thing.
Oh, I love it too. I still use it to this day. And so does
perfect
Dennis.
sense.
Dennis uses it, right, Dennis?
Well, no. Well, I use this.
Here's the Dennis, you could. Your kid
It's
can
modified. It's modified from the original. And I've got all sorts of information on the back as well. But this is actually available on my website, my version of it. But this is what I like to dial in. You dial in the AC, you can check out what everybody needs. So I don't even have to use Thaco for calculating. I let the wheel do it all.
You could put your kid through college with that wheel,
I know.
It's so valuable. Eric, did you have a question of Rick?
I could ask questions all night, but no.
Well, yeah, I think Eric wanted to ask about Mayaheen, right?
Yeah, Mayaheen.
Please go for it.
Yeah.
Is that she was introduced about this time, and I'm curious if that was like a reference in some ways to Carl or something.
Yeah, there are all sorts of references to people in there. This is the whole thing. There were a lot more that came on later on. But yeah, I mean, it used to be the thing. I mean, Carl used to do it all the time as well. I mean, you'll see it. There are links that if you know what you're looking for. I only glance. I haven't read it through properly. Some of the later things, like I know in the Ashes and Ios, the what is it? I can't remember now.
Evil.
I was looking the other day,
Yeah.
but yeah, I keep finding little bits. I keep seeing people in there. So yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, there's a lot of that. There's a lot
Wow.
of people we know. A lot of people that work for TSR as well are in there.
Well, I remember actually that old email that I dug up
Yeah.
recently from 2008. You had just looked through my website.
Yeah.
And you're saying that it's interesting that you're going down memory lane because you're
Yeah,
seeing
yeah.
characters that I have from the box set, that you remember as your PCs and your NPCs
Yes,
from your
yeah.
personal campaign.
No, absolutely, and it's very strange. It's got a life of its own, and it's lived beyond
yeah.
this. And I see that you have your own place in Greyhawk now, which we
Yeah.
didn't know about at the
does.
time. You have a shop there, I believe, which is brilliant. I mean, it had a life of its own. I'm so pleased that it.
Well,
it did
Eric
develop
and I
that way.
both have a tendency to add things from our campaigns into
Well,
what
yeah.
I
we
think
do.
we all do, which is
It
great.
started
yeah.
with Gary.
No,
I mean,
it's only normal.
That's adds. I think that adds authenticity in some ways.
I
It's,
think
after all, it's like it is a game. You got to remember that.
yeah.
And when you find out, like, oh, that character was this designer's paladin or whatever, as long as it's not hogging all the spotlight from the player characters who are the real heroes, that's fun to me. I think that just
Yeah.
adds dimension to
Yeah.
it.
Well, and so much attention that's paid over the decades to all of the personal characters of Gary and Ernie and Rob and all of those guys, those characters that have become part of obviously the original, gang of NPCs. No, sure. That there's people
Thank you, Linda.
really tie into that personal connection that creators put into what they work, what they do, right?
I just find it amazing that it's still all alive and living. The whole city is still alive, and actually more than it was when we had the part, created the parts that started off. I mean, it's just fantastic.
Who,
And I look at it now and think it's amazing, absolutely stunning.
so whose
And
character
the fact
was
you're redrawing the maps now is amazing.
there's a huge Greyhawk community growing behind the scenes. There is.
Really?
There's bloggers, there's streamers, there's websites, there's Discord's a lot. So it's
Well,
it's
I
going.
was thinking about this. Sorry, I was thinking about this the other day. Is that our campaign went out of Greyhawk and created its own setting and so forth, because it involved all sorts of mystical symbolism and so forth. And I was looking at this the other day, and I was looking at Anna's fantastic new map and
Oh,
thinking,
thank you.
could I retrofit this back again? Could I retrofit all the stuff that we did there and fit it back into Greyhawk where it came from in the first place? And maybe I can actually. Maybe it's something I'll look at.
That sounds like a super cool project to get more fun
Yeah,
stuff.
I think it'd be
Well,
quite
Rick,
fun.
I think from what Rick's told me before as well is that part of what Carl and he were doing towards the end of their stint together was to the far west,
Yeah.
where everybody's always hungry to find out information about, right?
Yeah. I mean, this was the thing. I mean, the whole Sunken Temple I mentioned there is in the Hell Furnaces, that bit there, just as you're coming over. It was in our version. I mean, I know they brought out the what's it? The Scarlet Brotherhood, is it? We had a very different version of that, and then there was a conspiracy within a conspiracy as well in there, that the Scarlet Brotherhood didn't know what they were doing. There was a driving force behind that were getting them to do things that they didn't realize that they were doing. So it all got very involved, very complex. But I think there's some interesting bits. It'd be nice to bring them back, and some of the full versions of the shorter things we did might be quite fun. And there were some amazing developments. I say, and I was talking to you, Dennis, the other day, is that we ended up with this massive cosmology, and with the sacred geometry and linking to the ground, that you had to know where the vertical the planets were, where the star, and there was all about this sort of thing and calculating. Then Carl will tell me when I got all my calculations wrong, and so it just wouldn't work. So yeah, I mean, it was getting quite involved. I don't know whether it would be enough a single adventuring group be able to do it all. But it might be quite interesting to retrofit it. And I think I've got most of the notes. There's hundreds of pages of notes, and I've told, or thousands of pages of notes. So I've told Dennis before, and maybe it's a case of some of it should come back to life.
I think so.
Maybe.
So, all right, I'm going to throw
Well, I
it
don't
out.
know how much has been developed in the rest of Greyhawk.
Oh my gosh, we're going to find out tonight, right? With a lot that Dennis has done. So
Yeah.
hang in there. tonight, a couple things. Thank you for the raid, Gary Con Live. That was awesome. We have 2 giveaways. This is a reprint. Courtesy of Canadian Ancient Gamer. This is the entire City of Greyhawk from
Wow.
DM's Guild. Hey, it's got all the maps in it. It's a reprint. All right. And then second one, we'll do the Slave Lords reprint too. All right. So nice big fat book for you. All the A series here. 2. My brain just shut off and I don't remember what 2 was. Oh my gosh. That's the way this night's
That was
been.
2. That was 2.
That was 2. Yeah. So
was
thank
2.
you.
Hey,
Rick,
Mike, I see you in there.
here's a big question. Whose character was Jalarzi Salavarian's?
Carl's.
Okay.
Whose was it?
Carl's. Yeah.
It was Carl's. Okay.
Yeah.
Ah.
Uh-huh. Nice.
Probably my
Was
name, but his
Hamadze the
character.
Wise someone's character as well?
Yeah. I mean, you could normally. That was actually quite unusual. It's probably my name and his character.
Okay.
You can tell. I mean, people like Aaron Strawn and things like that tend to be Carl's if they're sort of upright and good, nice people. They tend to be his more than anything else. And if they're a bit dubious, they're probably mine.
That's so awesome. I can't believe you wrote it.
It's
in
okay, I
2
think-
weeks.
Yeah. It was, yes, yeah. As I say, one person types, the other person dictates, and it's brilliant. That's one of the reasons it flows, I think, because it really was almost a stream of consciousness from beginning to end. That we sat down, we knew what we were going to write. We'd already worked out our chapter headings. We knew who we wanted to be in there. We knew, for example, Carl wanted me to write the guilds. He was going to do this and so forth. And as we went along, we were bouncing ideas off each other, and one person would effectively dictate it to the other. But if we came to a point, then we might change a few bits and so forth as we were going along. But that was the principle. We had an idea of what we were going to do. And of course, one of the things we wanted to introduce there, which was something we want to bring in later on. Sorry, I'm really talking fast, aren't I?
Oh, please, that's
was
fine.
the whole
It's
idea
great.
of the NPCs at the back of the book, I believe, where you see them at several different levels,
Oh,
so
yes,
that they
yes.
can reappear. I think this is something that we were quite keen on
3
developing.
stage.
Yeah, that you wouldn't just see a flat character or a flat, a nemesis character. They would actually reappear at different levels in the future.
The Rennie Tyrant seems to be everyone, and the Cursed Paladin seem to be the 2 favorites out of everyone. They're fantastic. They're just
Yeah.
it's just genius. So, did you guys draw on your real life experiences for the guild system? I mean, the guilds are just so
Yeah.
so Londonish.
Yeah, I mean, I did historical research for people and things like that, even though my specialist area is Egyptology. So yes, I mean, this is definitely the real thing. I mean, some of them are quite obscure, which is the reason we dug them out. I mean, the thing is, I mentioned to you a fantastic book the other day to Dennis, which is A Time Traveler's Guide to Medieval England. If you come across that, it's quite fantastic. I'll try and remember the author or look it up later on. But it really captures the whole essence of a medieval city and the whole way that the guilds really ran everything. But of course, the classic things they say we can never do enough, and I was trying to push the whole sermon and all this sort of thing, is that they say that you could tell you were coming to a city because you could smell it way before you could see it. So we wanted this dirty, gritty thing there, and the guild people are absolutely essential because it couldn't run without it. And we wanted those rivalries and those clearly defined areas to create frictions for the characters to work within. So I think it was a difficult structure there, just expecting these people to run this city was not going to happen. It had to have that level of control, which is where the guilds came in. And they were the ones that we loved. I mean, the Beggars Guild, I was absolutely determined to do and really
Genius.
push that one. And things like the Lamplighters were quite important.
Night Watchman.
Because, they were the Watchmen that took over later on. In the original version that we did, they were also linked across Greyhawk, and they looked after people's money. They were almost like the banking operation as well.
Almost
They
like
were
the
the
Templars.
Lamplighters and things like the Templars. That actually came from an old
awesome.
Sumerian god, funnily enough, because the Sumerian god of Lamplighters also was the god of banking, but that's the other thing.
So, there
I
are
didn't know that connection.
Dennis,
There you
News
are.
for me.
Dennis,
Yeah.
please ask questions because you know what to get in there to
Probably
Oh,
asked a
we're
lot
going
already.
Rick is doing good
This is
so
awesome.
far on his own.
So fantastic.
So
Yeah.
may I ask, what was the meaning? Did you know the format of this? That is going to be this many books, this many pages, a box set, or something? Or was
We
it
were
just...
told how many pages we had to do. That
Okay,
was it. Just
yeah.
fill up the pages.
Mhm.
That was it.
196.
Essentially, that was it.
Yep.
Oh,
It's
hallmark of
is
creative
it?
direction for Greyhawk at the
Yeah.
time.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
a shame, and we would have liked to have done the whole project. We really would. We'd have liked to have written the other book as well, but they weren't really quite prepared to let us do that at the time, which was a shame, really, because I think it would have been much more integrated, probably a lot dirtier and grittier than it was. I think it is getting back there. I've seen Dennis's map and so forth, and finally, there's lots of houses in there.
Yeah.
It was
It's
a
not
difficult one.
Parkland anymore.
I mean,
Yeah, so
yeah.
what was your first reaction when you saw the final map and the sketch?
I was just amazed. It wasn't anything like the city that we were writing about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
It
by the way,
was-
that's
and-
number
and-
2. Dennis
and
is
where
going
was
to Dennis going to reveal a new map tonight. Brand new
Yeah,
updated
yeah.
Greyhawk map tonight.
Yep.
We will reveal tonight from Dennis. Okay? So that was number 2. I don't know how I forgot that. My apologies, Rick, for interrupting. But yeah, that's it.
Yep. No.
Yeah.
That's great.
Brand
See,
new
our city
map.
had our city had walls. It had all this stuff around the river, and it came from the river that way. Whereas
Yeah.
the map that we saw seemed to start there and move to the river,
Yeah.
which was a little bit strange.
Yeah.
I mean,
John.
So now, Rick, I need to ask you, because we have 2 different versions of the city. We have the TSR version and we have
Yep.
the Gary version that he introduced in one of his later books from New
Yeah,
Infinities,
yeah.
the city of Hawks. Did Gary leave any concept or
No.
anything? You had no
No.
information
no,
whatsoever.
all we
on
could
his...
get was from the books. And of course,
Okay,
if you
yeah.
read the books,
Mhm.
then you might get this idea of the wolves. I mean, there's quite a lot, I believe, in Gould the Road
Yeah.
that's actually down
Mhm.
by the wolves and Beggar Thief
yeah,
around
yeah.
there. I'm
Mhm.
trying to remember back
Yeah.
because
Old
So-
we
City.
went
So
through
you
it
had
all and
Saga
marked
of Old
everything
City
up.
and
Yeah, yeah.
Artifact of Evil, those first two
that's
books.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, we went through all of those with a fine tooth comb, marking everything down, making everything we could. And I was looking at a big traditional medieval city, which was crammed and rammed and everything like that. Carl was a bit different though, because I was all trying to be historical, so I was always at a loss because how do you reconcile this with fantasy? And Carl was always about high fantasy and just don't worry about it, get on with it. We can have an opera house here. We can have this. That's all okay. But there wouldn't be an opera house. Well, we're having one, and it's.
All right. So did the Greyhawk Dragon exist before this? I don't think.
Greyhawk Dragon.
Oh,
I
the
don't think
green-
so. No.
I
The
think the
Dragon.
Green Dragon.
No, the Greyhawk
Green
Dragon,
Dragon-
Estrella
All right.
is in here.
No.
Oh,
Yeah.
you mean that one?
You guys
Okay.
created the Greyhawk Dragon.
Yes. Yeah.
That's what I thought. Okay. Wow.
Cool.
That is awesome.
Yes. Sorry. Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought you mean the Green Dragon Inn. Yeah.
No, the
Yeah,
actual
exactly.
Greyhawk Dragon itself, because it's the first
Greyhawk
time I ever
Dragon,
saw
yes.
it was in this book.
Yeah. She's in the opera, isn't she?
Yeah, Estrella.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yes, that's one of the little twists again of hiding things in which we a bit naughty really.
Go ahead, Eric.
All right, so you already kind of alluded to the humor of the situation of like, hey, first project busted out in a couple of weeks. Oh, by the way, it's the city of Greyhawk. No
Yeah,
big
yeah.
deal, right?
Exactly.
I'm wondering, so obviously you and Carl had so many opportunities to either add new stuff to the setting or to pick out lore from the novels or other things or from your own campaigns. When it came to, okay, we've got to, or we get to do the Circle of Eight, who back in the day
Yeah.
was so ill-defined that you had to
Yep.
invent a couple of new people even to get to the
Yes, yeah.
that was, who is the Circle of Eight? What's the deal with this? Of course, then shortly thereafter they put him in that Vecna Lives adventure where they all got
Yeah.
murdered in the first thing.
And the
And I think in
film.
some ways that sort of even elevated the mystery back in the
Yeah,
day.
yeah.
What the hell? And I remember early like online fandom, 1993, 94, certainly some of the earliest stuff I wrote for the setting and got published was about the Circle of Eight. And a lot of that studying we did was of that section in Folks, Feuds, and Factions. So do you have any memory of the weight
Yep.
of, oh my God, it falls to us?
This is, I
guys-
mean, this is exactly it. Yeah. Not only do we want you to do the City of Greyhawk, which
Right.
I see we still have this thing about, oh, this is Gygax's, you can't touch this. There were so many purists in there saying, I don't care what you do, it's going to be rubbish. not only do we want you to write the City of Greyhawk about this, but we want you to do the Circle of Eight. We want all of this as well. We want all of these people defined, who are obviously Gygax's characters and his group. Oh, just define them and bring them to life within this setting as well while you're at it.
Minor
Yeah.
thing.
That was in the order. They said
Sorry?
include the circle. They said please include the Circle of
Yeah,
Eight.
it was basically
Text order or whatever.
we were just told, that this is one of the things that was important in there, and we decided to make a little bit more about it. The whole idea of the the College of Magic and so forth there, which is obviously based on the Cambridge colleges, which is why there's the little bowler-hatted dwarves wandering around
With no door. There's no door. You have to
There's
figure out
no-
how to get in.
Did they give you a list that said make sure Autoluke is in there and this person, that person, or was it totally
No,
up
it
to
said
you
just do Circle of Eight.
guys?
Wow.
And come up with one of them.
Yeah, we sat there going, hold on a minute.
How many we got? 1, 2, 3.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
Oh my
yeah.
God, that's right.
It was
It
fun,
kind
but
of
yeah, we
reinforces
loved
my
it.
contention that everything good that came out of Greyhawk at that moment in its
Yeah.
development history was just by accident because they asked the right.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I think they did it because they needed to possess it, if you see what I mean. It was a case of they thought that maybe Gygax might have stolen it back.
So
And so,
Yeah.
they released the Forgotten Realms and was saying everything was focused on the Forgotten Realms. And Greyhawk was being forgotten about. And they thought, oh, we're better sort of reassert our dominance and put out a Greyhawk product. And it just happened to be a good one, which...
The best one.
Thank you.
The best one. I'm sorry. The
Yeah,
box set
thank you.
is the best one. It's the best publication by far. Wow.
It's a shame they wouldn't let us do any more. They
I
tried to make me
can't-
write Dragonlance.
Yeah,
And
oh
I
my
hated
gosh.
Dragonlance. I couldn't even look at it.
Oh my gosh. It's just all right. Fellowship of the Torch. One of my favorite adventure groups of all time. Are they PCs in your campaign?
They started off as PCs. They're probably slightly more developed than they ended up. So
Okay.
I think they're the idealized one, but yes, yeah, they're real.
Yes.
Yeah,
Nice to see Ariane Nightstar. What a great character.
yeah. There were some interesting groups that we had. As I said, there was a group with like Cambridge, professors and doctors, like senior people there. We ran several groups. There was another one which was bankers actually in the City of London. I used to go down on a Wednesday night and we used to meet in one of the missing places in the city. And also all the people there was another really high powered group that worked for Shell and BP. So they worked for the oil companies. And they also used to meet down in London. I would go down the train from Cambridge and we'd do games with them. And so there were quite a few going on, and Carl used to come to quite a few of those as well to really push it along and develop, the games that we were working on. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of real things in there. So I suppose that's one of the reasons it worked,
Oh yeah.
because it's there's a big flight of imagination, but there are some real things in there that were developed over quite some time. And were played and tested, but Carl was also very good at just working things out from scratch anyway, and just putting stats together to create something that was a viable adventure or scenario.
They're memorable characters. One connection to that, you have what I believe is the first scalable magic item in Greyhawk ever, the Torch of Anaxander, which she has. So was that in your game as a scalable weapon?
There were several sort of artifact things like that were part of this very big campaign. So yeah, I mean, this is the basis of it. Yes, I mean it was slightly different at the time, but we created. Of course, as I say, the big problem is that we were playing in first edition, and we had to switch everything up to second. So no, there weren't massive changes, but there were enough to be annoying. And so I think we just used sort of core elements there and built that up. So as a case of, as we were discussing, oh yeah, we could use some of that from there. We could build this in there. And a lot of these things appear in his later works as well, the things that came out of the games we were working on in the first place.
Fortunately, a lot of 1E to 2E was evolutionary. From 2E to 3E, there are huge changes there, right? And each of the later editions, I think, were big changes, and it makes it more difficult to transfer stuff along. But one of the things that Eric and I have talked about in previous streams, I think, is I think when Gary was writing the books, I don't think he had in his mind a set idea of what the city, the detailed city was. I think he wrote the novels as a novel.
Yeah.
And so everyone has since then tried to piece together what he thought the city was like. I don't personally think he had a designed city other than that really crude map that's in one of the books, right? Other than that map, I think he just wrote stories of an exciting narrative of how Gord travels from one part of the city to the other, and thinking of what interesting things he would encounter, not having a map that he was looking at with a street index and that sort of thing. So when you guys had it put into your lap, I don't think there probably was anything that could have been passed on to you, even if they were willing to do that.
But it was a very difficult time as well, if you remember, the politics going on within TSR and gaming as a whole. I mean, some people thought Gary was the Antichrist, and some people thought he was the genius that everything, and he was the word, and nothing else mattered apart from what he said. So
people
it was a very difficult thing.
That.
Yeah, I know they do. I noticed this was coming up again the other day, and which is quite interesting. But I mean, at the time, there was the whole bit about, no, you can't touch Greyhawk. You know, how dare you even go anywhere near it? It's not yours, which made it a little bit more difficult. And we were, you know, really quite worried in a way that we were stepping on all sorts of people's toes. And we had no idea how it would be received, especially going, oh, you're going to go and do the Circle of Eight, which is sort of sacred to people, you know, all the Tensor and so forth. You know, how dare we even look at this?
Yes, and touching the third rail, you're going to get electrocuted.
Yeah. I mean, the politics was huge then. I mean, it was all consuming. As I mentioned, you know, it got very, very nasty at certain times. I mean, say Don Turnbull was. So his house was cleaned out while he was away over in the States. I mean, they had all his furniture put on the street because it was actually owned by the company and not by him.
Oh my gosh.
I think what was happening was that Gary and Don, who had known each other for ages, were trying to make TSR UK a separate entity. And of course, Lorraine had to put a foot down and say, actually, I own all of TSR, not just the Inc., but I own UK and I own it entirely. And so they'd been having little meetings, and we ended up with senior lawyers and everything coming over. We were one by one pulled into a side office and had our loyalty tested, basically, about, you know, do you side with Don or do you side with us? Which was quite interesting. Wow. And of course, they took over everything. They made sure the bank accounts, things like that. They turfed. Don was over at Lake Geneva and the Sheridan Springs office at the time, sitting outside Lorraine's office. I probably shouldn't say this.
It's so many years.
And so that when the signal was that they'd actually repossessed his house and everything and turfed all his stuff on the street and taken his car and taken all his benefits, they then called him in and said, oh, by the way, you know, I own this company. I have no idea how you're getting home because we've cancelled your plane ticket. We've cancelled your insurance. We've cancelled everything. We've cancelled your company credit cards. So bye. And I believe you had to go and stay with Gary for a while while they tried to get enough money to get him back to the UK. But they were hard. I ended up getting on with Lorraine, actually, funny enough. As I say, we wrote a review once of, I think it was the Dungeons and Catacombs Guide or something like that, which we said was the worst book the TSR had ever produced. And Lorraine jumped out at me once and said, I totally agree with you. So, what?
Right.
So what was the reaction when you had finished and handed over the text and all that for?
Well, it was just, oh yeah, let's get on to the next project. Unfortunately, the next project they gave me was Dragonlance, and so I'm not doing this. And that was sort of the end of it.
Oh, wow.
How did you get a sense of what the public reaction was like?
Yeah.
No, not at all. Not at all. We heard it was quite
never
popular.
Knew?
No, not at all. I mean, the thing is, Callum and I were actually living in this place at the time, later on. And he was still writing and things like that. And I was, the real world had taken over for me, unfortunately. I had children and things. And I went off and became I went off and did photography. I was a fashion photographer for a while and all sorts of things. And of course, I do events and things. I do things like Glastonbury over here and some of all the really big festivals and things. My plan was always to come back to writing this one day. Maybe it's going to happen sooner. It was actually start happening now, but the pandemic sort of changed
I
that.
keep
and
I
they're
keep
saying,
poking him.
Oh, that's
yeah, I
good.
know you
That's
do.
good,
You
Dennis.
finally got me to do this. you
That's
see.
great.
I know.
Oh, this is awesome, Rick. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, this is just we're finding out so many things.
And
Rick,
there's tons of stuff that we've
Well,
never
and back
touched.
then as well. I mean, it would be really hard. Well, Eric and I remember from when we were in the early 90s in the rooms and that, getting even little snippets of any kind of information beyond holding this for any of the products was virtually impossible.
Yeah,
Now, with the internet, you can find out it. So
Yeah.
writers like Eric, when Eric produces stuff for Pathfinder now, he's getting instantaneous massive amounts of feedback. That
we
was
never
not
had it.
happening for
No,
you back
no.
then, right?
No.
It's totally
And that's why I'm so amazed, you know, when I started speaking to you and you said, oh, I'll look at this, look at that, going, oh my God, look, it's carrying on. It's got a life of its own. All these little characters we put together, they are something else now. And I think that's fantastic. I'm so pleased with that. I'm just, you know, I'm awed by the way it's been developed by other people. I think that's fantastic. Really brilliant.
Yeah, it's so much fun, and you really and a bunch of other authors back then and developers, you lit the spark, and now we just live with it and keep creating from it, so to speak.
I mean, it's a shame we didn't do more. I mean, we could have done. I think it just the world changed. I mean,
But
I had different priorities. I couldn't
but
live
also
on
the world was different. Now you can tell all the constraints you had to work in. Meaning you had to crank this out in 3 weeks, and there was no not enormous amount of research material to dig into.
That's right. I mean, the other side of that, Cole's a single guy who just, you know, he not only did he write stuff for TSR, but if you remember, I mentioned this to you last week, Dennis, is that if you remember the Fighting Fantasy books that were, you know, in Livingston Steve Jackson's name, he wrote pretty much all of them.
Wait.
But he was knocking things out you wouldn't believe how much he used to write.
He was writing that stuff under pseudonyms then?
Yes, yeah. He would
know
write
what
it
some
for
of the
them.
pseudonyms were that he used?
Oh, well, I've got lists of his pseudonyms. He's written all sorts of books. But this is the thing, when he disappeared, I mean, he had always planned to disappear. He always told me that's what he was going to do. And the only way to get in touch with him would be through his agent. And when nobody could find him, I did try and get in touch with him through his agent, but nothing. And of
so
course
he blanked on you as well.
Yeah, everyone.
Just
That's sort of what he was planning to do in a way. I mean, he was a complex individual, and we had a fantastic relationship for years and things. And it was a bit of a shame. I mean, he turned normal, so to speak. He went out in daylight. Well, eventually, after a while, when we knew him, but then apparently things happened, and you know. The other side.
Well, unfortunately, I was the one that told Rick that he had passed away as well.
Oh man.
Yeah.
He never surfaced publicly. I mean, he was like a ghost, you know, to all of us. And the idea, like over the years, you know, people like Gygax and others who we always were like, do you think they'll ever get online? They all appeared, but and you are one of the later ones, right? But he never showed up. And so the mystery of who this guy is, I mean, it's just, I don't think there are NPCs we know more about, you know, than Carl.
Yes, you probably do. You probably do know. Yeah, you know more about his writing. I mean, it was complex. I mean,
that's part of the reason why I asked Rick to write that memorial that's on my website there about working with Carl, because there was no information about Carl.
No, the thing was, he used to write a lot more than people realize. He used to write music reviews for the New Musical Express and things, and I used to read, and he used to write under some different pseudonyms, but I knew his style, and you could read this guy, oh, Carl wrote that. And those still appeared after he disappeared, and there were things appearing all over the place. He used to write all sorts of awful astrological pot boilers for people, you know, why you should be a Gemini and all this sort of stuff, just to make money, just to knock these things out. But he was very lucky like that. He could sit down, he could write things all the time, and you know, he was single and whatever. Real world came in on me, and I couldn't afford to live on what TSL paid me for writing a few books. And unfortunately, I had to go off and do other things because I had family and all that sort of stuff that I was trying to support.
Well, so many of the early designers have, you know, over the years had financial problems if they tried to stay in design and in game design. A lot of them.
And the other side of that, of what I was being offered, wasn't much fun. I mean, I know Carl had to stick with some fairly difficult Dungeon Dragons. I mean, as I say, whatever it was, King's Harvest, was it Queen's Fest? I can't, whatever they were. He had to write quite a few things like that before they started giving him the big one. And he was writing a lot for Games Workshop and their Warhammer Fantasy role playing, because they would pay him money and they would get to do things. So when he got there was Top Ballista, wasn't there?
Wow.
And things like that. But when he finally got, to do Greyhawk Wars and things, that was actually quite significant that they trusted him to do that. And I think, he'd laid down and done the groundwork for this. But he could live as a writer. I mean, he had simple tastes, pot of Irish whiskey and things like that. And he was quite happy with his own company, so he got on and did this. And unfortunately, I went off to do other things. And as I say, he got offered those. I got offered Dragonlance. I looked at I don't want to do this. It was railroading. It was, get from A to B and just draw a line. And I thought, I don't want to do this, really. I didn't enjoy it. I started writing it. I just said, no, I can't do it. And after that, they wouldn't give me any more work.
Wow. My gosh.
I'm sorry. I know Dragonlance is a popular.
No, it's great. I mean, it's good to hear this.
Well,
No one's ever heard this before.
Yeah.
No, true. Yeah, it's been a secret for a long time.
Yeah.
Wow. That's so. Was Ivid the Undying the last straw when they didn't publish it?
Probably, yeah.
Okay.
It was, yeah. I mean, it's strange, wasn't it? I don't know what was going on there. I mean, everything changed quite rapidly. I wasn't, keeping up to date with the politics and so forth that went on there. But as I see, looking back now, there was a lot of it. And it was a shame, and I don't understand where TSR went with going, let's put out another game world and another game world and another game world, and everything else got watered down. And it's good. I mean, Greyhawk is lucky that it had that core group of people that carried it on at least through the difficult period. And looking now, there's so much information, and they're saying, the fantastic maps we're seeing here. I've got Anna's map over there, which I keep looking through and going, oh, look at this place. I didn't know about that before, and trying to find out about that, which is great. And I'm thinking, oh, can I put all this sacred geometry over there? And would it work? And if I draw it like that, can I get the whole campaign in here? So I might do it.
That was beautiful.
Yeah, because Greyhawk is that unique because it has such a long time span.
Yes.
It was there from the beginning, and then there was a couple of golden ages and so on. So, and then Living Greyhawk at the end that kind of added a whole bunch of stuff. So yeah.
I mean, Living Greyhawk, this was something that we always used to talk about. This was something that that's developing something. If the internet had existed then, we would have probably created something that as a campaign system that could be contributed to and built up over huge amounts of people. What we always wanted was the actual living world, where when an adventuring group cleared something out, it was cleared out, and something else might move in. But that's so complex. I don't think we'll ever get around to that.
Well, and when Eric created Living Greyhawk as the framework, and then it expanded to thousands of adventures written by hundreds of people, that material is just so immense. And a lot of that is what you see in Anna's maps. Is she's been adding a lot of stuff from Living Greyhawk into her map.
Yeah, I try to take from every. I try to make it kind of the best of, so to speak, from every era, including some of the best fan made that is kind of cherished in the community.
Yeah, no, I think it's brilliant. I love that, and the map looks absolutely stunning like that. I'll spend hours zooming in on that.
Right, Eric.
What is that?
I wanted to make an interesting sort of timeline observation here, because when we brought up Ivid the Undying as the final kind of Greyhawk product, it's such a pivotal moment for me, and I think in many ways for the whole Greyhawk brand, because what they did with that brilliant manuscript, instead of publishing it the way they were supposed to, is they just put it online, and they said, hey, if you want this, we got this little community on AOL, maybe you should sign up. And they used it as kind of an inducement to get fans to check out their AOL area. And I think that's what got me online, other than just a college account, and B, there were numerous people like that whole early, certainly the AOL component of the fandom. I think was fueled by people trying to find that lost manuscript, and thus the impression that it gave was that Greyhawk was just as vibrant as the Forgotten Realms and as the other sort of modern campaigns that you said kind of had diluted stuff. And then all of a sudden, the staff is on there. They're seeing that we're outpacing the FR boards and all that, and they start really kind of going, "Wow, you know, there is something here." And when they relaunched Greyhawk in 1998, it was with fan support and fan help because of that effort. So in a weird way, it seemed almost like this door that seemed to be closing, you know, to Carl and to the freelance side of Greyhawk Contra.
That was the
opened the door for the fandom to come in, and then, you know, there's subsequently been hundreds of pages of officially published Greyhawk stuff since then. So it's really like, I feel in a weird way with because again, the idea of like, oh, Rick or Carl they could be online, we could talk to them, like we almost all of us just sort of passed each other just a little bit.
It's such a shame, isn't it?
And I think it ended up being maybe ultimately in the campaign settings best interest as a community that book was delivered in the way that it was, because it really blossoms the whole.
I mean, we tried to
where it is now, and it's just amazing.
We tried to work with Forgotten Realms, and when we did, we had to. We were sent. I mentioned to Dennis as well. I have somewhere, probably in the storage unit, I have the original printouts of the Forgotten Realms and the whole second edition book. You know, remember the old computer paper with the stuff. So it's like this. And of course, you know, we were supposed to do. We did the play testing and things. And we tried to work on them, but it never really sort of gelled with us. I think it felt, I don't know, not necessarily artificial. It didn't feel like ours. I think that was the problem. It didn't feel like a campaign world that we could make our own. That they were trying to sort of micromanage certain areas of it, and the whole overarching sort of elements of it was a bit of an issue, I think, that many people had. Whereas Greyhawk was at this time especially was the little cousin or something, or the unfavored cousin, the relative that wasn't, you know, allowed to sit at the big table, and it was a lot more exciting, I think, and I think a lot of people felt that way as well, that there was, but it was also jealously guarded, as I said. That's the other side of it. And it was, you did feel you were treading on toes by developing anything with it. But yeah, I mean, I'm just absolutely amazed to see how it's developed. And you know, you come back after so many years. I mean, my kids never played D&D, couldn't get them to do it. They like Warhammer, they like things like that, but they never played, which was a shame. And you know, we lost contact with other groups and people that did play, and now of course we're seeing Discord, we're seeing all sorts of things. You can actually do this online, which is just amazing. I think that, you know, this is the problem, is finding groups and finding the right groups and the groups of people getting them together. It was difficult then, but it was a lot, you know, it was a lot easier then than it is now.
Yeah. All right, we got some specific questions here, Rick.
Right.
Christoph asked about what you think about the Guild of Wizardry's influence on the city and the whole region when you had it in your City of Greyhawk setting.
Yeah. I mean, this is the danger there, was to not be like Terry Pratchett and make the Guild of Wizardry like his Guild of Wizardry or School of Wizardry. I think we were also quite keen not to let it take over. It would be too easy for it to be the controlling element of the city.
Yeah.
And I think it was quite important that it was balanced out with the guilds and with the structures that existed that could hold those at bay. I don't think we made the sort of clerical side, the sort of priest side, the temple side, as strong as it probably could be to offset that. Okay. But we believed it was the power that's trying to take over. It was trying to control the city, but it couldn't, because of the structures that existed there. This is why it's been there for so long. So I say it was very tempting, just as I say, to go down that Terry Pratchett route and go, oh, we'll just make it fun like this, and we'll do it like that, and we'll make it all powerful and all seeing. But yeah, I think this is part of the circle of 8 of actually making them disparate and not actually present half the time, was sort of quite important as well, that they couldn't actually get together as this big group and influence things too far. But I could go on about that for hours.
That's the great thing about this discussion.
Oh, the discussions we used to have about, oh yeah, castles and things like that. Well, why would a castle look like that if there's flying creatures? You know, all this sort of stuff. You got your dinner there?
Yep.
My son delivered it. I don't know if I'm going to have time to eat it while we're chatting. No, this is too interesting. But Yeah, I mean, certainly Greyhawk appealed to different people. I mean, the Realms had, DMs who like to have that micromanaged creation for them. Worked great for people who had that play style, but I think Eric alluded to it already. There was groups of people with a certain other play style that gravitated towards the kind of, I don't want to say emptiness of Greyhawk, but the openness of Greyhawk. And one of my sort of favorite aspects of what a lot of people did with LG, with Living Greyhawk and all of that. Well, and even before that, when particularly before and during while Eric was editing Dragon and that sort of thing, more than I think any other campaign world, Greyhawk really had a huge contribution by fans rather than company or freelance writers that were assigned projects, right? I think through all of those years, World of Greyhawk has had the most fan contribution that's become official, however you want to call it that, than any of the other campaign worlds. It's accessible at that point.
I mean, it really didn't feel like TSO wanted to develop it that much, quite honestly. I think they just did what they did to maintain a hold on it, which was a shame. And the best bit about it is that allowed the fans to take it over and really create something with it.
Well, look what Eric did.
Brilliant. This is the thing. I mean, I've been looking through Pathfinder as well and thinking, oh, can I adapt stuff to this as well?
Yeah. There's some similarities there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I was reading Crusades and whatever, Castles and Crusades the other day. Yeah.
Steven
just
Schiller.
Keeping up with things.
Triller Games, awesome company too. So Dennis always is mentioning this cottage.
Exactly.
You gotta hear about the cottage
you were
stories.
literally a cottage.
It's
that true?
It's actually a bit more of a cottage. I mean, it's actually a huge old.
It's a big.
It was
Jay, you might be able to pull
up
up the image from my website. There's a photograph of it on my website.
Okay. Do you have? Do you know? All right. Let me
The
look.
link.
Yeah. If you put it in chat, that would be great. As Rick tells the story.
Because you're hoping that
it's actually just down the coast from where we are now. It's about 3 miles away that way. And yeah, it's this amazing old medieval building. The key was probably about this big for the front door, which was one of those big, it was like a dungeon. It was a massive, great wooden iron-bound door with the great things in there. I mean, it was built partly the 12th and 13th centuries as a hunting lodge.
Awesome.
Yeah, so it was built right back then as a hunting lodge and so forth. For I can't remember, the whole place was this. At the time, this whole area was a sort of hunting preserve and stone quarries and so forth. So yeah, it was this amazing cottage that I was living in, and Carl came down. We wrote stuff in there. Yeah, there was no heating in there. We had a back boiler. It was all this sort of stuff. We got over 13 degrees centigrade, we'd have to take our jumpers off and things, but it was amazing because you sit there. I mean, there was lead lighted windows. You're sitting there with your Mac Plus on the desk there, looking out to sea, and it was just stunning. I mean, that did help writing things, especially the massive key and the doors. It was very primitive in there as well. It was pretty much like a medieval building inside, freezing cold, but it was conducive to writing stuff.
Yeah.
Awesome.
When you said you were sitting there with maps and stuff, did you sketch out the city as you wrote it to kind of?
We had ideas. Yeah, we were trying to put things in there, but we knew they weren't paying attention. The main thing we were doing is putting these things down so that when the next book was written, they wouldn't miss them out. We had to put reference notes. So the references,
meaning you had to have consistency within the project, so to speak. So
so we have mentioned this place, so make sure it's put in. And then obviously we had to write the reference, see page whatever in the other book, and it would just be page XX, and hoping the editor would get it right and pack me up. But there was a list of things. I mean, there were places obviously to create it, and then this is the thing, it comes back to the difficulties with the adventures that we were writing, and write adventures for it. When you don't know the layout of the city, it's incredibly hard, which is why they tend to be general.
Generals are great. They're all over the place. They're fantastic.
Did you
I mean,
have any
things like Fight
contact?
for the Goat, they were real things. They were part of games that we played, you know. But all these things happened at the same time. They weren't. It wasn't episodic as such. That a lot of these things were going on. That there was this whole democratic issue going on within Greyhawk at the time, which is when the guy got polymorphed into a goat. All this sort of thing.
Yeah, vote for the goat.
and there was you know, there was terrorism by the people from Wastrey, the Hoffing Prophet stuff. So there was all these things were going on in the city while the adventures were there. But we had in our own games, we had a map, we had a rough idea of where things were. But of course, when they were converting to this, they became very general, although a lot of the detail was stripped out because it has to go onto a single card. I mean, this was a new thing as well. They put on that and said, "Oh, can you do 24 adventures, single page adventures, please, as well?" Oh, all right, yeah, we'll knock them out.
Yeah. Did you have
That
any
was an
contact?
afterthought.
Did you have any contact with Doug Niles at all about?
No,
this?
not really. No, we
you
gave
just
him a
turned in
list.
your thing, and that was the last.
Yeah.
The last thing you heard.
I think we sent a list into. I can't remember who was editing it.
It was Kim Mohan, according to
it
the
was
credit.
Kim. Yeah, it was Kim. Yeah. So
did you have any contact with him, or was that mostly?
We did have contact with Kim. Yeah, we did. And we said, "Oh, this is what we're doing. This is the plans." We had been through the rough idea of what we're going to do, and of course, we then said, "Here's the list of everywhere that we've mentioned. Make sure it goes in the other book or goes on the map."
So, getting to those adventure cards, I want to point out two of them that I think you guys may have been first on. Sword Race of the Cron Hills. Sword Race doesn't appear till the Jim Ward book. So is that yours? Did you guys make Sword Race? I thought, okay. 2, you have Dracoliches, which everyone thinks is Forgotten Realms, because you have a pair of Dracoliches in one of those adventure cards.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Oops.
Love it. No, I love it. I mean, I was like, so yeah, and we're going back to 89 here. So yeah. All right.
Yeah. God, yeah.
Very cool.
It was actually written, end of 88 it was written. It was, between Christmas and New Year, 88. But, there were a lot of things that we threw in there. So it was...
just note those kind of really cool things about the, that are memorable.
Yeah, I mean, it was difficult. It was just a case of putting things, and we didn't feel that things were that, sort of, that structured that we couldn't include whatever we wanted to a certain extent, so long as we could justify it within a Greyhawk setting. And there were things that we'd have liked to have added. There were all sorts of things that probably exist in our games that we didn't include or didn't put in because they probably wouldn't have been considered canon or in keeping what had been before. We tried to be true to what that Gary had written and what it was Rose Estes, wasn't it, who wrote the other books, to try and keep it as close to that and what had existed before. And of course we had, because I was a TSR staffer, I had the entire collection of Dragon magazines to go through and check this and read that, and can we add this and can we work that. So we did try and be as true to existing products as we could. I think Greyhawk Adventures came out just before that, did it? Was it in the summer that year?
It's close. It's close.
Yeah.
So I noticed from the books, the Gord novels, you mentioned Aaron Tall in here, and you also mentioned Theoden.
They're asking about my shirt.
Right.
Flaming skeleton playing a guitar.
But other than that, I don't know a lot of direct references of names to the books.
No.
Okay.
No, I mean, this is it. I mean, it was supposed to have been slightly after that point. Some of the names we did come from someone, trying to where some of them came from. But there were sources that we did find that had quite a few names in that we thought, we're going to have to use these that didn't really fit within our sort of naming conventions of how we would name them. So there are a few that don't work and go, well, we had to use the name that was already there, but we probably rewrote the characters to go with it. We just felt that we were sort of obliged to keep some of the names that existed within other, whether it came from Dragon magazine or something that Gary had written or some scrap of information we found somewhere. So yes, I mean it was, there was a lot of research that went into it beforehand, given the fact we only had a few weeks. But we did a lot of reading.
I know it so intricately because it's my favorite. Like I said, I've said it multiple times. It's my favorite of all time. That box set made it so I wasn't scared to run a city adventure.
Really?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Really, there was nothing available to run any kind of city before that. That was really the first. I mean, I still remember vividly buying that box set the week it came out. I mean, I had
Really?
a
Brilliant.
subscription.
Yeah.
I had a subscription to Dragon going back to the early '80s,
Yeah.
and you would hear snippets about Gary saying, "Yeah, I'm working on the City of Greyhawk. It's going to come out next year."
Yeah. Yeah.
And that 10 years later, we're still waiting for the
Yeah.
City
Yeah.
of Greyhawk, right? And so finally, the box set comes out. So I rip open the box and I read it cover to cover, and
Yep.
was blown away by the written material. And I unfolded the map, and my heart sunk.
And you redrew it.
And that week,
Thought,
no,
I'm gonna
I'm
redraw
serious.
that.
That week, I set my mind to redraw the map, and I did it for my campaign. At some point on
Sewer
Usenet,
map.
I'm telling people about it on Usenet and on Grey Talk. After that, and people started asking, "Well, can I get a copy of it?" So I went out and I still have the original drawing. I should pull it out actually, maybe. Went out and got it white printed, right? Like the opposite of from a blueprinting company for doing house blueprints, right? It's the only place you could get big photocopies back then, right? And sent it to people. There was about 20 copies of it that were made that different people asked for copies, and then I contacted oh geez, Eric, who is the Dave was editor for Dragon before
Dave
you?
Gross?
Dave Gross. Contacted Dave Gross and said, "Hey, you might be interested in printing this in the Dragon magazine." And I didn't know at the time, but this was when Ryan Dancy did this crying in the bathroom, and TSR was going down and was about to be bought out. I didn't know any of that was going on at the time, and then Dave says, "Yeah, it's a cool map, but sorry, we can't do anything." What we didn't know was that they couldn't pay their printers at the time, and that
There's a lot of
things were
things they
going.
couldn't do.
Yeah, things went to hell in a handbasket, and then years later.
Did you any of you see the check room in Southern Springs?
I
Road
think
with the check
Eric
printer?
got invited to the offices, and was it you that said that you saw it hanging on a wall in somebody's office?
No, I've never been to. I never went to the original.
There
store.
was
Oh, okay.
the check printing room was next to Lorraine's office, and there was the printer that ran out the checks that had the space for tens of millions, whatever on the dollars thing, which you go, let me into that. Yeah.
So, I mean, I got frustrated after a few years and decided I was going to put it on my website. And I contacted Eric at the time. He says, "Hey, this is what I'm working on." Eric messaged me right away and says, "Don't put it on your website. Let me get back to you."
Well, I think at the time
Awesome.
I knew we were gearing up to launch Living Greyhawk, and there was going to
Yeah.
be,
Yeah.
I have them here, but like the magazines that we did, the little series of articles on.
Yep.
And it was like, ooh,
I've got
I might
PDFs
actually
of
be in a
them.
position to make something happen here. And honestly, Dennis, because you had that, the amount of work that went into that is
Years.
obviously years, right? And
Yep.
so to be able to just kind of instantly have it, I think was another thing that really propelled that campaign into success, and it was really a fun project. to work
Yeah.
on.
It was a perfect meeting at the right time.
Right.
Everything just lined up. It was just,
Super
So many
It was
other
awesome.
things over Greyhawk's history have not lined up correctly. It's like
No,
celebrated
no.
3 times where the right freelancer was there, or
Yeah.
the right
Right.
person making the printing decisions was there. Yeah.
It took me 3.5 years to get this, and only because
Yeah.
someone in the community kindly made a trade with me to give me this with it in there. I mean, so I've converted over from the map you see down below me now to this just recently, because it's so wonderful as we kind of move into the Malden. Rick probably wants a little bit of a break. We're hammering him with all sorts of great stories and questions
Grab some
here.
water, give me a second.
Well, like I said before, Rick has never been online before to
This is
share his
awesome.
stories. So I'm more than happy to let him take the
Oh, yeah.
spotlight
Yeah.
for
We
the
love the
evening.
stories. Yep.
So,
Get these stories out
Got my
there.
water.
yeah. So, Eric, When
Yes.
did you decide I have to have this in Living Greyhawk Journal, Malden's map?
I mean, right away. I think that I was, it's getting to the point now where I'm starting to forget some stuff, guys. But like,
Oh, I forgot it all already.
but I think that I kind of was hired at Wizards in 1999 with the idea that I would come in and help launch the campaign, edit Polyhedron magazine, and launch this new Greyhawk magazine to support the campaign, which was something Lisa Stevens, who then went on to found Paizo several years later, she was big in the management there. So there was a nice alignment of management priorities, the opportunity provided by the launch of a new edition, and the need to replace the Forgotten Realms Living City campaign, which was a great idea, but had grown over almost 15, 20 years into a monster that was unmanageable. And it would have been impossible to make the transition to the new edition of the game. They knew they were going to align the core rule books a little more with Greyhawk. I mean, we could do a whole show on whether that was true or not, but that was the idea. And so the idea of like, let's
Oh,
do
there
a
were always so many
campaign
good ideas, weren't there?
set in Greyhawk just seemed to fit all the criteria. And so I was brought in to do the magazine, and a lot of the stuff, we'd been working on kind of for the Orth Journal fanzine. There were these dream projects, Dennis, your map, and Gary and I had been working on the Circle of Eight for a long time, and others had other projects. And so like a lot of those departments and ideas for the magazine kind of I came to Wizards with. So I'd say probably about 99 was probably early 1999 was probably when all of those stars kind of seemed to align, and then it took us a year or so to get it all out.
This is not the new map. This is
the one we published.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the published map.
And I was just looking at it again, Dennis, and we've just done for Pathfinder, the big Absalom book I've been working on for years, and it's got a giant map. And
I haven't
and
seen
I was
that.
looking at this map, and I will say a couple of things about it, right? I mean, I like that it conforms to the rough outline of the City of Greyhawk box set, so you can tell it's the same place. I don't necessarily love the City of Greyhawk's take on the shape of the city. So really trying to balance the continuity. Right. But if you look at it now, the way that it is, there's enough differentiation between the different parts of the districts and things. You can really imagine yourself going from the bottom of the map and walking through the different districts and things like that. And I think, I love the Absalom map as well, but it's so big and it's a much larger city. And I do, when I look at your map, I get a real strong sense of place, and some of that's nostalgia, sure. But like, I really like the juxtapositions, the different densities of the buildings and things.
And I did that on purpose.
Yeah. Right.
And one of the things, obviously, reading Gary's books, when he describes the slum district versus when he's describing the garden district, right? And so the Foreign Quarter and the River Quarter, you see is more regular. When you're looking at the Thieves Quarter and the Slums Quarter, I made that chaotic on purpose.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Well, more chaotic, anyways. Is lots of all sorts of dead ends and things. So yeah, and claustrophobic. The buildings are all smaller and
realistic.
And yeah, no, I did that, but by keeping the positions of the original buildings from the original map, they're all in the same positions. I think there's only one or two buildings out of all of that original map that I had to move for various other reasons, but pretty much almost everything from the map is there. And if you look at its position here in the box set poster, it's in the same position in my map, right? But yeah, no, it was fun to do. It was obviously a labor of love. I spent thousands of hours on it over years to generate it. But
that's the thing when we have campaigns as long. You get a project and it's a pet project and it could go on for decades, right?
Well, yeah.
Dennis, and that's the great thing about the formation of this. And
whether it's I'm creating stuff for my website, or it's Eric creating stuff for LG, or if it's Rick creating stuff to create this box set, when you use your own campaign as source material, you're already 3/4 there before you've started. You can rely on that material that you've thought about for a long time. And there's detail, there's consistency that you can do that's, you know, hard to do if you're just starting from something brand new from scratch that you hadn't thought about at all or
Yeah,
put any effort into.
You're building on what Rick,
Yeah.
what Rick and Carl and Doug did. That's basically what you're doing. I mean,
Well, yeah, no,
it's an
exactly.
homage to them, you know.
That's all
No,
right.
seriously,
Yeah,
it
lovely.
is. It's not a
Yeah,
rewrite. It's an enhancement of it. And note, please, everyone, there are articles that go with this that Eric and Dennis wrote. Most of them are about Clerksburg and the Artisan Quarter. But if you want details on those,
Our original plan was to do all of the quarters. That was the original plan.
Yep.
it's still wonderful. So, yeah, and it's just like I'm not switching over till I get the map, and you know, so finally got it. So Christoph asked you about street names, Malden, Dennis.
Most of the street names were on the original map.
Okay.
Most of the street names come from the original map. I did go in, and while I was doing this, I read through all of the Gord books, and every time there was a reference to a street or a location, I noted it. So there are a bunch of streets that are added to my map that are from Gary's novels, and I tried to, there's one or two places in his novels, and it's been so long since I read them, I don't remember where, but there's a couple of instances where there's kind of a narrative of Gord moving through the city, and it says he's going from one street to another to another.
Yeah.
And so when I took those streets that weren't already on the box set map, I tried to place them within, particularly Old City, in the order. So it's possible to read the Gord books and follow my map and see where Gord is going.
That's awesome.
By matching the sequence of streets that he would be traveling from south to north, say, right? And I tried to do that with the street names. More or less successful. Obviously, it's not a map that Gary used when he wrote the novels. I think he just created that out of his head. But I did make an effort. I'm kind of obsessive in that way of trying to take, and I know Eric is the same way, trying to take bits and pieces and things from all over the place and trying to tie them together. And this map was one of those efforts, was to try to tie together a lot of things from the past, and basically retconning, I guess. Bringing those things in to where people could actually use it.
Just and note that there's so much more development outside the city on this map than there was on the original too. I mean, the docks make much more sense up here, Barge End.
Well, the docks and the caravan area to the southwest as well.
Yeah.
Every medieval city had crap outside the walls because the city would fill up to the walls, right, and spill out. And so, you know, I always felt that I should add more to the outside than I did. But
I mean, that book that I mentioned before to you, Dennis, is well worth having a look. So it does actually speak quite a bit
you've mentioned it to me before as well.
Medieval cities developed and every inch of space was taken up. And of course, half the time they're stealing the stone from the walls. So your defences were getting taken apart. Somebody's using it to build a quick shack around the corner and so forth. But all the space would end up being used up by somebody somehow, and I think, you know, you'll get it's coming together. And I'd still see more development outside the walls of things right up against it. It'd be lovely, but it's getting there, isn't it? We've got sewers now as well, haven't you?
Yeah, Dennis added a sewers map to it.
Yeah, and a roads map.
Was that from the box set?
It's mine.
Yeah,
the
box set.
Yes, the base of the sewers map comes from the box set.
Yeah, then you added to it.
Map though, right?
I added to it. I added to it.
It's got some limited areas. It's got the Lord's Tomb area, right, and some others. I don't know where. I just had it out.
And then I added things like the below ground temple from the Falcon series, for example. Every little bit that I could get from the different modules, I tried to add into the city.
There it is. You did a wonderful job, Dennis. It's just fantastic.
Oh,
here's the original map. As you can see, it's blue and it's got some underground.
Yep, that's the original sewers map.
Yeah, it's the original sewers map. So at least it was, there was some thought put into it. Now I have this behind me, and it's more of an art piece, right? This is the artistic version of the box set, right? That comes in there. I mean, it's
right.
cool.
Oh, the orthogonal draw or
Yeah.
thought
Yeah.
or
Valerie
orthographic
Val
drawing.
Valasek did that drawing.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
And I think it's for a piece of work. It's pretty accurate based on the map. But
Well,
then,
she
yeah.
obviously had the original map
yeah,
uh,
which
when
is
she drew that.
which is
But
this
yeah,
one
yeah,
here.
it's an interesting drawing.
It's like the
Interesting.
Board of Tourism brochure drawing. of it.
exactly. That's exactly. You're absolutely right.
Yeah,
Garrett.
Cancer
Yes,
Grey
yes.
Hawk.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
Which is okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
know.
Now we know that the city walls are
I'm
pink,
not on the screen.
not
They're
not red.
made out of
or
pink
yellow.
granite, maybe.
Oh.
I
Well,
hadn't thought
I've
of that.
always assumed on my map, I made the area around Greyhawk that orange
screen.
yellow rock because I always assumed that the logo Greyhawk was actually
Okay,
hammered
yeah,
out
yeah.
from that rock.
Right,
So that's
nice,
why
yeah.
the rock of that area has the same color as the Greyhawk logo. So and to the amazement, I was up hiking up the hills where I live here in Southern California, and I found rock that had the same color, and I was like, yes, first time in the world I've found Greyhawk color.
Yeah, thanks, Greyhawk Bart.
All right. So
Yeah.
Rick, tell us
Hmm.
something we may not know about your Free City of Greyhawk, or something that's like very anecdotal.
But development or something more fun.
Oh, God, that's a tricky one, isn't it? Or someone
Yeah.
Drop that on me.
Uh,
I don't know.
Something that you haven't, that was never incled in
there's so
anything
much
you
was never
published.
included.
Or
No, so much
something
was
that you're like, oh, we snuck that in.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. Yeah, we tried to get other bits in, and there was the big problem was we had limited number of pages and too many ideas. Really, I think that we wanted to get in there. There were all sorts of areas that we'd like to have done more with. There were all sorts of people we wanted to keep in there, which we couldn't do. I mean, we wanted to develop the School of Magic more. The guilds I could have written so much more on. So much more, but I'd have to go through the notes and things and see what was missed out, because it's fascinating rereading it again just recently, and went through the whole thing going, oh, did we write that?
So you still have the notes?
I do, yes.
Oh,
yes.
wonderful. Great. Fantastic.
We have also, I've got most of this is the stuff we've been carrying around so much junk with us. I mean, they're in a storage unit. But we have all the original stuff that we noted down, all the things. But there's all the campaign stuff as well. I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages of campaign notes of the original versions of some of the full versions of some of what you see as the short, one-page adventures there. They were proper full-length adventures that sort of module length almost, that were half campaigns or whole campaigns that were stuck in all over Greyhawk. As I say, the problem is that we then took our campaign out of Greyhawk and created another world around it, partly because of the way the sacred geometry worked and so forth was important. So I say I might bring it back. I think that's worth having a look at. But yes, I mean, I do need to find all these things, and then I'll be able to sort of give you even more stories.
That's going to hound you
and
like
show you
crazy.
some of the original.
Go, Derek.
All right, I got a question. So that's like probably the 9th sacred geometry reference today.
Oh yeah.
I'm connecting things in my mind, and I feel like I read somewhere or heard somewhere that part of Carl's education was in parapsychology or something like
Yes. Yes.
that. Okay,
Yeah.
so can you talk?
He was a
little
triple
bit-
doctorate. He was a doctor of chemistry,
Okay,
a doctor of psychology, and a doctor of parapsychology.
amazing.
You've got to bear in mind.
Can you talk a little bit about that? I'm also like very interested in occultism and all that. I've got all
Yeah.
these books and things.
Eric's got a huge collection of books on
I'm
this.
just very curious
Well,
about that.
So I would show you my library as well, but I'm having to work in the kitchen.
Fair enough. But could you talk a little bit about that, of just the influence of that, like?
Yeah, I mean, Carl was one of the actual pioneers, or at the forefront of parapsychological research in the UK. There was a big spat between him and another Dr. Susan Blackmore.
Yeah, yeah. I
Really?
read about
Weirdly
that
enough,
one.
Susan Blackmore.
Yeah.
Blackmore
What a
again.
name.
How
Yeah.
weird. And they were constant at each other's throats, claiming that Carl had faked his results or whatever and things like that.
Or
But this is
spied on
where
her lab
Carl's,
as well, or something.
yeah, there was also, so she was up in Edinburgh and he was down in Cambridge, and there was all sorts of stuff where he believed that he proved that certain levels of telepathy beyond statistical probability. This is where his whole statistics thing came in. And I mean, he sort of really developed the field at Cambridge as the whole parapsychological, you know, all this sort of stuff. So as I say, you know, he came from there. He ended up, I think, he won the ICO Chemistry Prize to Cambridge at 13 years old. So, I mean, he had a doctorate by the time he was, what, 19, 20, and ended up with 3, all from Cambridge, which is just quite ridiculous. An incredibly intelligent individual, but I don't think being sent to a major university at a young age really helped your social development.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a problem. So, yes, I mean, he was very much a psychologist, and he would knock out psychological books just for the sake of making a bit of extra money. And so, yes, and then he was doing all this research, which was just before I met him. And they've been doing the whole bit with the ping pong balls over the eyes and dimming the lights and things. And then they say that beyond statistical probability, they managed to communicate the shapes on the card to a person in another room. Now, Susan Blackmore claims that that was all faked, and you know, they were manipulating it. It gets quite involved. But that was one of his areas of interest. I mean, he didn't really have that much to do with it later on. But I think there was the idea that there were links was always in there. The idea that of structures of links between astronomy and sacred geometry and things on the ground and so forth are always, you know, quite important. These were the things and strings that we then really developed in the campaign that became all-consuming about understanding positions within the world and so forth. As I say, and the movement of the heavens became important and all this sort of stuff. And this then came into the campaign, which was in, and I say I'll talk about retrofitting it if I can, that was in Greyhawk that moved somewhere else. And so there were planes and demi-planes that opened depending on the conjunction. You could only access things on that basis. And these were incredibly complex things to work out. So I used to get it wrong. He would tell me, no, you've got it wrong. You've got the wrong day or whatever, and you know, ruin the whole story.
So
it was incredibly difficult.
Did you get into developing the heavens and the
yes,
stars?
Yes. Oh, yeah. This was all important about the movement of the heavens. We're creating specific stars. What we were looking at, as I said, there was this level below in the Scarlet Brotherhood. Underneath it all was actually manipulating them. They thought they were the secret society, but there was another secret society manipulating that secret society just to pile the things on top.
I can almost sniff Tharistun or something in that kind of.
Yeah, and of course it all got very Lovecraftian then, because there were then powers that were older than Earth. There were powers that the Soul and the Bakloonish people, this was the reason for the reign of Colourless Fire. This was what was going on there, that they were manipulating things and things were happening. And what you then have is that you have the societies within the societies, which we did have in Greyhawk, that aren't in there because that second layer was just going too far, where these people are actually trying to manipulate things into getting the return of the old ones, that sort of thing, on a simple, very simple basis. But it's all about releasing things, knowing where the key is, and you know, and it's quests all over the place to make this happen. And this is what we were building up, and we built this in as part of the games that we were doing. As I say, those things have been stripped out. You know what we've left out in there. There was this other level of conspiracy within everything that was so deep, and history had largely been rewritten to take it out so that people weren't aware of it. So if you could find the old original documents and things, they mentioned stuff that if you went to the Cartographers Guild or you went to the sages in Greyhawk and asked them about this, no, this is established history, this is wrong. So of course we had one of the things we had where people were turning up with a map and a whole load of information which they couldn't understand and visiting the Cartographers Guild, and the Cartographers go, oh, we're not touching that, take it away. And of course the next night it's stolen, disappears. And this was all the things that we were building into, and this was the stuff that was going on. This is why there was the temple down in the hell furnaces that led further and led you further into the area there, which was, you know, the what do they call it? The waste down there.
Sea of dust. Yeah.
Sea of dust. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
So it was all down there, but it's actually linked from the old Bright Desert, and you know, you drew the ley lines across, and everything built up together. And Greyhawk wasn't very significant in terms of sacred geometry, but it was where everything happened, because it was the place where people knew more than they were letting on, but not many of them. Sorry, it's very complex.
This is
Some of that cresting into the Lovecraftian element.
Yes.
And Anna
Yeah.
mentioned Ferris Dunn, reminds me of a very obscure and interesting element in the Night Below box set campaign that Carl Sargent wrote,
Yeah.
wherein I think that, and then he did a deities book wherein he touched on
yeah.
the elder elemental god, if
Yes,
I'm remembering
yes.
correctly.
Another one. Yeah.
And I think Carl was one of the ones, again, my guys, I've forgotten a lot, but I feel like he was one of the people kind of conflating the elder elemental god and Ferris Dunn in that. And that seems to play right into that sort of ancient, otherworldly. Do you sense,
No, that's definitely, that's it. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. It was bigger and more involved, and I suppose it's probably too close to Lovecraft in a certain way. But yeah, there were these ridiculous ancient powers that, in building the things that the Backloonish people and the Sewer people and so forth, the experiments they were doing, and the structures and how they were powering up sacred geometry within the planet, was actually opening up the gate to bring them in. And that was what we were looking at. And in fact, it had been shut. Everything had been shut, and it was locked. And there were several adventures that they went on where they didn't realize that what they were doing is they're being duped to unlock. They thought they were doing something completely different, and they thought they were doing something heroic and getting into a place and sorting something out. In fact, they were doing the opposite, and they were being manipulated by this level below the Scarlet Brotherhood. Awesome. And so a lot of things started to go wrong, and they were directly responsible when they actually thought they were the ones doing good, which obviously, when you've got somebody who's a lawful good paladin, becomes very difficult for them to deal with. So a lot of it was about the psychology, a lot of it was about a lot of role playing, a lot of building.
What was that Johnny
Depp
Depp movie where he gets tricked into releasing the devil at the end?
Oh yeah, I seem to remember. So yeah, it's similar to that. So they start doing this, and what they actually do is they go into a place and they think they're saving some community. In fact, they're unlocking a key which has been put there to keep this
Ninth Gate.
structure in
Thanks,
control.
Starshack. Yeah, Ninth Gate. That was it. Yeah.
That's
Ninth
awesome.
Yeah,
Gate.
so and this developed from there. They do realize what's actually going on, but they never really quite get to grips with how involved it is. And there are certain areas within this which they need to go, which are only on this plane when there are certain conjunctions and so forth, and it gets quite involved. I mean, there's thousands of pages of this.
It's all coming back now. And now I have even more questions. So there's a character that I associate with Carl. I don't think it was in the City of Greyhawk box set, but it may have been from your campaigns and things that really had that kind of next level view of what was really going on, and that was a character, the Blue Mage Philidor.
He's in
I don't know if
from
that
the
rings
ashes.
a bell with you at all, but now knowing that was such an interesting aspect of the campaigns, and knowing that a lot of that has connectivity, it's very tempting to kind of go back through this stuff.
Lens
and see what might plug into that storyline, because he never really kind of made sense. But in this context, maybe he does.
Yeah, and this is the thing. So a lot of those elements, and they moved to an area. I mean, the whole Ayers bit up there, that was nothing. We never went there. We never really took. So I think, you know, he was asked to actually build the walls, and it's going to come from there, not anyone else. You know, the whole idea. It's going to be, and I think a lot of those elements were brought in. I wouldn't say superficial, but it's not as deep as it would be. It's got to be something that's accessible. The thing that we were putting together was pretty impenetrable, really. I mean, you know, it would be a 1,000-page DM's guide just to actually get you through the mathematics or something, what we're trying to achieve here. And you know, some of it, and just to allow for everything that goes on. I mean, as I say, Carl was incredibly difficult as a player because he knew everything. He knew the books. He knew the stats for every monster, everything. So you had to change things around. You had to do something that was different. You had to make things beyond face value because it was too easy otherwise, and it was a bit dull. So you had to challenge them, and that was part of the fun. You know, it's things like, you know, going back, Wine Harvest. I mean, somebody was talking about they were going to play that the other day, which is lovely. This was done deliberately as one of those sort of dichotomies of what do you do? What is the correct procedure here? Because in fact, you know, the little goblins, they're not the ones at fault, but your instinct is to actually go after them and sort them out, and that's wrong. And so this was challenging some of his characters because he was very good at alignment play. He was very good at that. He would make sure that his characters were role played as lawful good, as was chaotic neutral or whatever. And so, you know, giving him these areas where he's actually got to think a little bit more about it, like say the ogres of the blinding light or all this sort of stuff, putting all these little bits in later on. And then of course, just winding him up by doing minding the store, for example, and oh yeah, collecting the toys on Pelor's Day, which was always good fun. But just silly little things like that. So there were other elements. In the campaign, these were all going on together. These were things that weren't, you know, they were part of an ongoing narrative. So they weren't as simple as just let's write something simple like that. These things all happened as strands of quite a complex game and quite a complex campaign. And there were several campaigns. There were campaigns, but Carl was in most of them. And you know, he's split between several groups, so he probably saw more of everything that was going together. And some of the elements do come through, but not as deep. I mean, you know, he hasn't, the elements are there. Yeah, that's part of the campaign. Yeah, I'll agree with that. Sorry, wittering on there.
No, that's great. Thank you.
I got a basic question. Since you were on the darker side, what are your thoughts of the Assassin's Guild not being assassin classes in here? Because they said, up, no more assassins.
Yeah, that's weird, isn't it? That's very strange. It's. I think this was another area that was quite difficult. I mean, okay, I think I'm thinking wrong in hindsight because, of course, the big problem is you know, Terry Pratchett's Assassin's Guild sort of tends to take over everything, and you see everything based on that after a little while. And that's, you know, that didn't exist when we were writing this. Those books hadn't even come across. And I think the case of what we were looking at, you know, especially there was, it isn't necessarily assassins as such. These are people that are hired killers and they get other people to do their dirty work. They're not the ones really trying to do it. I think we have an adventure basically like that, don't we? Was it Hierarch or something?
Yeah, you go to kill, to kill a Hierarch. To kill a Hierarch,
And our Assassin's Guild more was adept at getting other people to do their dirty work, and that was the principle behind it. I think rather than actually having operatives that went out and did it.
Wanted to ask that question. So it was right in that era, where that you know, class kind of disappears. So, all right. I know we've been bouncing around with a lot of questions out here, but we do have to. We have a reveal tonight too, right?
Yeah,
we have a reveal. So, Dennis, why don't you give us a little background as to what you've been working on before I hit this link?
Well, it was.
I'm gonna hit a link.
Time, and enough years have passed by. One of the when the Living Greyhawk poster map came out, when Eric published that, it was at that point I just had a tiny little version of it on my website because that map is obviously owned by TSR, right? Or Wizards, I should say. But a lot of people over the years, well, like yourself, only recently managed to get a hold of a copy of it. Not many people can get a good version of it. So one of the things that I always intended on doing was to make a revision of it that I can have a higher res version on the website. And so, you know, as a promise to Eric, I never put a high res image of that map up on the web. There are other people who have scanned it. If you hunt around enough, you can find scans, some better than others, of that map. But I've never put up a version of it until I knew that I wanted to redo it at some point, because, well, you know, technology has changed, and so years later I asked Anna if she would be interested in helping me create something with a
We
more
worked on it
detailed
for a bit.
background. Yeah, and
Yep.
worked on it for a bit. And Anna contributed the textures. She did the road textures, the field text, not the cultivated fields, but the background.
A lot of the background textures.
Yeah,
for
the
various
background
things. Yep.
texture for it. And so she did that. And we were tried to get a little bit of 3D happening at some point years ago. And
It was a
we
bit
were
too
both-
early for the technology to be in place.
yeah, and we were both
unfortunately.
really busy doing other
Yep,
stuff. And
yep.
and so the 3D texture of it never really got off the ground.
Yep.
And so but I kind of dabbled at it a little bit, and I got the texture files from Anna a while ago and started rebuilding it. So I've created, it's up on the website now. Anybody, if you go to, you have the link there.
Yes, I do. I'm going to. Here it comes. Here we go. Link and map. Map.
So it's up
Link.
there.
Simultaneous. Here we go. Malden's Greyhawk map
Yep,
updated.
and then there's a map. Then there's the map index is a separate page.
Yes, and they're both in that
But
link.
yeah, so it's got Anna's textures in the back. Ironically, the 3D look to it, I did by hand. It wasn't Anna, so it's not real Anna 3D. I wish it was, but her and I have said that we will someday get back to creating.
I've been 2 years from now. That's when I want to launch.
2 years
the-
from now.
yeah.
Okay, we've got
He
a
said
date.
version 3. This is version 2.
By
This is
Dennis
And then we
Smith.
can work on version 3 of
And
the
so
city.
the 3D-ness there, which
Yeah.
matches the kind of topography from the original poster.
It's cool. Yeah.
I hand did. I drew in the fake 3D. It's not real 3D.
But
Anyway,
it's cool. Yep.
and I've continued to add locations to it because since that LG map came out, there's been a lot of stuff that's come out since. I mean, Eric obviously did with Jason and Jason. The expedition to Greyhawk Ruins, there we go. So I have the locations from there are in there. Jason Bullman also did a couple of modules for both Dungeon and the LG Core mods that had a whole bunch of City of Greyhawk locations there in there. So there's a couple of other things as well. I forget now. The different sources are listed. But anyways, so the original LGJ2, the original map that was published at 243 numbered locations. The new map has 332 numbered locations. So it continues to get expanded and detailed, and so all of those things are
Want me to add a few more?
So I'm going to give you an example from expeditions. R24 is Kellick's Tower. I know that right off the bat. That's where
Yep.
yeah, so I know that.
Yeah.
And one of these, R16, I believe, is the Suwoken Temple. That's from expedition. It's one of these right on the back wall back here. One of these is the Perth Ann Estate too that you can get in that
Yep,
adventure.
the Perth Ann Estate.
You know,
Yeah,
so and let's talk about this one because Dewey Carathon already talked about it. He said there was an issue with C27 to Seekers. What?
yeah, there's an issue. He wrote the Seekers article for Earth Journal 25 with Gary
Yeah, I got
and
that
put
here.
the Seekers Lodge there. But then in Expedition, Eric put a secret Seekers Lodge in, let me see which.
R14 Geld's Maps. Secrets.
There it is. That's
Just
it.
happened to be on that page. I'm not.
Oh, okay.
There it is, right there, right here.
So there are 2 Seekers Lodges, and I think probably only one can legitimately exist. So it's up to DMs to decide. I know, up to DMs to decide if they want Gary and Rick's Seekers or if you want Eric, Jason, and Jason's Seekers. But they're both on the map. They're both on the map. I think Geld's is. Let me see. I need to pull up the map on this computer here. Hang on.
Good.
Here.
Where's the other one from, Dennis?
Earth Journal article.
Yeah,
Earth
Earth-
Journal 25.
Yeah, here it is. Here.
Got it.
Well, they're not going to reveal where it is, are they?
Yeah.
So-
Everyone knows that Kellic
I'm
and
sure
his
it's awesome.
adventuring companions, Tira and Auric, are the characters from Bill Willingham's old cartoon ads for AD&D, right?
No, really?
Oh,
I never put that together.
That
Tira
was
and
my
Aur-
idea.
Oh my
That's
gosh.
the rival adventuring group from the Age of Worms Adventure Path is the
Oh, yeah, yeah,
adventurers
yeah.
from those
yeah.
old cartoon ads from like 81 or whenever.
I
it was.
didn't even put that together because Tira
Wow.
plays a big role in expeditions. She's like
Well,
the
that's
liaison
where-
to the Thieves Guild.
That's where she's from.
Wow, nice one, Eric. Very cool. So
We're all big nerds,
someone asked if you ran your I think it was Prenzy asked if you ran your Age of Worms game, and during the one on the arena Greyhawk got wiped out by zombies or something. I don't think that happens, right? I think you were in that. It could.
That's where our campaign petered out, actually, in that adventure. So I wouldn't put it past myself or one of the players to say, "Oh yeah, the zombies took over the whole city." That certainly didn't happen in the campaign. But that the Champions Belt, which I think is Adventure 5 or 6, is where we.
Yeah. In fact, I ripped stuff off from that on my Thursday night game because I'm
It
right
was
in
a
the arena.
huge disaster, as
Yeah.
I recall. There
Yeah.
were giant undead worms attacking the people in the stands, and I mean, it was not
Sweet.
good. It did not go the way that it was supposed to go, but that just happened to be when the campaign fell apart.
I'm going to do only one shameless shout out, and I'm going to just say, hey, this is what's going on right there in my arena right now.
Oh yeah,
there you go.
There, we got the Froggy Myth in there. Yeah, so yeah,
Ooh.
I ripped that off right from the Age of Worms adventure. I admit. So I got the Beggars Guild are coming back. It's another side thing, but just to show there's other ways to throw that Greyhawk out there. That was enough for me shamelessly plugging something. All right, so well, Dennis, this is awesome. You can go there. It's like a 3 meg file, so it is zoomable. I'm zooming the same file that you're gonna pull off of the site. So it is very nice, and you can get that. And thank you for sharing that tonight. That is awesome. And note that there will be it'll continue to update, right?
Oh yeah.
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 Don't worry, I'll get with Dennis and I'll get some of my locations on there too. So it's some.
Sure.
There's
We
plenty-
can,
plenty-
let's hit 500 locations.
Yes, let's do it. Absolutely. So I know we're coming on time, and I always say this. Okay, if we run a couple minutes late, is everyone okay with that, or is everyone got to be somewhere? Just let me know. All right, because we're 14 minutes before we end. Just want to know.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Just want to make sure.
It's-
Want to be
For
courteous.
Rick, it's like what 3 in the morning.
No, you've gone an hour ahead, so it's not even 1 o'clock yet. So
Oh,
okay,
so
good.
no problem.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Don't let
early
me
for
run too late.
Early for me, yeah.
Yeah, I just want to be courteous to everyone. So, all right. I know we had some questions in the audience that I missed. Please feel free to ask a couple. Eric, Anna, Dennis, why don't we share more questions for Rick while we have Rick here? Because it's wonderful.
Oh, actually, Rick is saying that I should change C27 from his article to a safe house. That's I could do,
a secret safe
that.
house.
There
There
you
you go. Okay.
I'll
Secret
change
safe
it.
house.
I'll change the map key so that it's a safe house. Sure.
There
Okay.
you go. Cool. Awesome. Very, very neat.
I got a question for Rick to kill a little bit of time. You know, you had mentioned, I think that you were hoping that, following up Folk Feuds and Factions, you would get a chance to actually write this. Was there ever, when you guys were just daydreaming about what would come next, did you ever talk about what you would want to do next for Greyhawk?
Yeah, I mean, we wanted to do more Greyhawk. There were loads of things that we wanted to do. I mean, the developments. What I didn't want to do was Dragonlance, which is what I was offered. But it was a shame. It never came up. There was obviously a change about how they're using freelancers as well as much as anything else. But yeah, there were a lot of things we discussed. I mean, coming out of the campaign. I don't think we didn't see the Greyhawk Wars and things as being part of what that then came in and to the Ashes and so forth, from the Ashes, sorry. That wasn't ever part of it. I think it was a lot we'd have liked to have developed around the city, of actually putting city adventures together, of developing some of the campaigns that lead from the city out and back again. As I say, the Scarlet Brotherhood hadn't been published by this stage, so this was an area that we were quite interested in. We loved our secret societies. We loved, all the things going on. There are hints within the folk feud and factions that there are these links and these secret societies and so forth going on, and there are agents within the city, and that would have been something to develop, but obviously it never happened. I think they thought they'd fulfilled their commitment to Greyhawk by bringing out the box set, and I think it was just it's a stroke of luck that actually it was actually quite good.
Yeah.
I don't think they were expecting to have something like that.
It's only because they don't care about Greyhawk that Greyhawk gets to be good.
Yes, I think that's probably what it was. I think there was a bit of thinking that way, that that everything, all the resources were going into Krynn and to the Forgotten Realms, and as I say, it was just a case of we'll establish our control and our dominance over Greyhawk just to prove to Gary it's not his. We own this. There it is. We put out this, and in fact, by accident, they ended up producing something which I've now discovered is a sort of a seminal piece of work for role-playing development, which is brilliant. We didn't ever expect it to be like that. I think Carl would have been really surprised that we're sitting here now discussing this with the cities getting bigger and bigger, and just thinking about that, maybe I should add some more locations to your thing, just to your map, to increase the index count there.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's a few ideas
Awesome.
that we didn't put in that maybe should be
I've
there.
told Rick many times I'm more than happy to host anything he wants to provide.
Yeah.
I need to
and-
get it together. I need to get it
Yeah.
together. It's finding the time. I mean, I was hoping that I was actually going to be doing a lot more of being able to do some more writing, get back into do things like this and the things I want to do rather than actually work. But obviously we've had 2 years of pandemic and running an events company and things like that. We've had no business now for 2 years, which has been a bit tough. So this year's going to be, I was expecting I was going to run 2 years and I was going to stop this year. Now I've got another 2 years of doing this probably, but yeah, it'd be good to do this. It'd be nice to sit there and put some stuff back together again, to write some things and remember what it is. But are you doing first edition or second edition for this is important, isn't it? Which do people play this in second edition as it was written, or is it more of a case of people still sticking with first?
I'm still the 2E person.
They
But-
play all over the place, meaning they're
Yeah.
everything from
No, there's everything.
You didn't
hardcore
scare
old
away.
school
You
to
didn't scare.
5e, Pathfinder,
Yeah,
Castle and Crusades. through the
And
third
one of the good
edition. Yeah.
things about
Stop.
material like this is it can
New to
very
the- new to the
easily be
discussion.
edition neutral.
Okay.
Edition neutral, and you can
Yep.
you can take it to apply it to 1E, 2E, 5E Pathfinder. I mean, why not?
Yep.
It's the background information is edition independent. Sure, you have to tweak NPC's stats, but
yeah, yeah.
You don't have to provide full stat blocks. You can just say a bard, high level bard, a fighter, a warrior,
yeah,
stuff
yeah.
like
Well,
that,
no,
and
and
then-
that's one of the
Carl would
things.
have been absolutely shocked by that. And the
Yeah.
stats are his best bit.
So, all right, let me
Love that more than anything.
burn through, burn through some of these questions. As far as Sergeant and working with Zeb Cook, Wars from the Ashes, did they combine
Yeah.
their efforts, or did Carl just say, "I'm just doing what I want" after the Wars came out?
I'm not entirely sure about that. I
Okay.
think he wouldn't have gone out on a limb. He would have been given, I know Zeb, and he would have probably given him the push in the right direction. I wouldn't want to comment too far. I know some of the
Okay.
material in there is stuff we've developed, but I'd imagine he wouldn't have created the Greyhawk Wars himself. There's no way that he would have actually seen the setting develop that way. I
She
think
just
it was a
ran with
case
it
of-
once Wars came out.
Yeah,
That was
yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because a lot of people go, "Oh, he went this far and that." I think it's, you got to use whatever you use in your game. I use like 85% of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, okay. All right.
I mean,
so-
it was interesting when I was talking about this with Dennis. Of course, when I was first came to the game, that trying to find any form of reference book or anything for anything. I mean, it was Judges Guild then, which room 23, there's 3 Umber Hulks. Room 24, whatever. I mean, if you were talking about there wasn't a city beforehand, there was City State of the Imperial Overlord, which was just a load of boxes with random stuff in it. So yes, I mean, this was quite a development, I think, really, as you say, for a city that actually had some buildings going on. But yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Great one. Another question from the audience. This is actually from Christoph. Is do you write now still, and would you consider ever writing something? Well, I think the answer is yes to that in the Earth Journal
Yes,
or
yeah.
compiling. So yeah, awesome.
Yeah, no, I'm writing stuff all the time. I've been, making massive notes in the past couple of years. As I say, even more than I'm developing some of the things we're doing. And as I say, I've actually seriously been looking at retrofitting what we were developing back into Greyhawk, having taken it out to put it back in again. And that could be quite fun. I think, I'm going to have a think about that over the next couple of weeks and go, is it going to work? And now we've got Anna's map, which is great. So I can actually see it in that sort of
This whole geographic
3D
glory.
yes, in its geographic glory. So I can start putting the sacred geometry and the ley lines on it and go, that's going to be a new layer for you, Anna.
Cool. Awesome.
How this all
Yeah.
works together and how the links work from there, and see if that something comes together. Because I'd actually really like to get that out.
Yeah.
And there's quite a lot of fun, weird stuff in there. If you think some of the others are strange, and there's some twists, and these have got a lot more than that. I've given part of it away though, so people know that there's a conspiracy, and the old ones are coming back.
We're all
We're gonna have to change that as well
Yeah.
now, aren't we?
Mhm. Yep.
We're almost like Fox News here.
So Dennis, I just came up with a genius idea. Or at least I think it
Okay.
is. We get us all back together, and we start
Yeah.
we go over locations that could be added to the map on the show.
Yeah.
And just talk about, hey, this may and give us some background on the locations.
Yeah.
What do you think, Eric?
Making them up on the spot. Like, how about
I have
We
about
can do that
I have
too.
about 50, and I imagine
We can
Rick
do
has
that
a whole
too.
bunch of them.
I have a whole bunch
I
of
think we've
too.
come with some.
Yeah.
Rick has
yeah.
lots of them. Yep.
Sure, I just ran through my first 500 good ideas for city locations in that big Absalom book. I'll come up with a 500.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. That would be awesome to fill
Oh,
that
that's
out.
fantastic,
That would be
yeah.
wonderful, a wonderful follow up. So, George, thank you for just something to get the community involved. Because doing it on Discord's one thing. We have 5 to 10 to 15 people, but doing it on a show, we almost have 200 people watching like we have tonight.
Wow.
Jay,
yes.
I have an idea. I want to crank that just a little.
Let's crank it.
I think what you could do instead of just like, hey, Anna, what 5 places would you like to add? Hey, Rick, what 5 places would you like to add? Hey, Dennis, what 5?
Mhm.
I think it'd be cooler to get a group together to talk about and conceptualize a
Mhm.
handful of neat places that are original
Yeah.
to be added in, rather than having everyone come with the pre-done list.
That sounds
think
good.
it's a
It'd be really
cool- yeah.
fun to kind of riff off of each other. Try to channel that.
Mm,
Yep.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
So what?
Coming up with the idea before you write it.
Yep.
I kind of like that idea.
So
Yeah,
we'll set up
got-
we'll set up a group Discord. We'll set up a
Yeah.
group Discord if everyone's okay.
Yeah.
Rick, do you use Discord?
Do it on a show.
Oh, I can do. I don't. I will do, yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
I need to do some
All right.
reading though. I need to do some catching up because I haven't read through Earth Journal. and I
We'll get
haven't read
Dennis.
these
We'll get
things I
Dennis
need to-
hooked up with
Yeah.
you, and we'll get together and
Yeah.
we'll do a group Discord. We'll
Yeah.
set that up.
Yeah.
All right, and then we'll
Oh,
do something
yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Awesome.
that would
Yeah.
be awesome, man. Very, very cool.
And then do some
Great idea,
some
Eric.
live world building on
My idea
on
was
the
to
spot.
do it live over an
Yeah.
hour.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
Wanna
but
do
it-
it,
and
just
then
do
bring
it.
it up,
You
and
know
then-
how that goes, and
Yeah, well, yeah, it's like
And then talk
it's
about
like an hour view of what it's like in the Paizo content meeting, right?
maybe.
Maybe.
it. This would be for fun for the community's sake. So we
Yep,
invite we
yep.
can invite 1 or 2 people from Campfire and Greyhawk Online as well. So we have a group. So it's all a group.
Yeah, for fun.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean it would be awesome.
Do some creating.
Do some
Yep.
creating.
I don't even know what I just accidentally did.
you
It's
started
wonderful.
World
It's
War III,
wonderful. I
Eric.
did no idea.
You started a world building spree.
Yeah, we'll talk about it. I think it'll be real fun.
You've lit the fuse on something. It's going to blow up. We don't know
Yep.
when it's going to get splattered.
Oh, God.
Minnie, come on,
Okay.
Eric. You said that we should run a bad adventure as a charity, and
Yes,
see what
and
that
that's
ended
coming up in
That was
July as well.
awesome.
So,
Mhm.
Oh, okay. Tell me more now. What is this, Jay?
well,
Which
you know,
one?
we have
Is
to.
it finally time?
It's either
Is it time for puppets?
it's puppets or Child's Play or
Gargoyles.
Doom Grinder. One of those three.
I don't know.
Doom
Doom
Grinder.
Grinder might be a little
Can't
bit
make
long
fun of
and
Doom Grinder. That's
depressing.
too recent.
All right, so puppets or
I will admit-
Child's Play. How's that sound? Unless you can think of a worse one.
Rick, do you know what we're talking about? These are like the worst.
Yeah,
adventures
I mean,
they
Doom
ever-
Grinder. I was doing some research work after I've been speaking to Dennis a little while back, a few months ago, and I thought, let's get up to date with things. And I got, oh my god, what's this?
I will not
That's
say
what we
anything
all
about
say.
that.
Yep.
That's what we all say.
I'll let
I
Jake.
mean, I used to. I'm sorry. I used to think. We always used to think it was the Catacombs guy was the worst product that was ever released, but I'm
It's-
amazed. I'm sorry. I'm just stunned by some of the things. I go, what really? Maybe adventure writing's changed, scenario writing's changed, but they never used to.
It
Well, I
was a
suppose they were.
momentary glitch in
Yeah.
time.
Well,
Yeah.
Puppets has an evil leprechaun puppet named Freddy McCruger.
That's so awesome.
So that's the one
I
I'm most
despair.
Yes,
Okay.
but I will go, Eric. I will go there. Someone from your era in Living Greyhawk put Applebee's on the Greyhawk map. Okay, so
I
it's
removed
it's
it
just
from
as
this
bad.
I removed it this edition,
Applebee's
yep.
is on that was on the
I
Greyhawk map for
removed
years.
it, and the funny thing was that it was somehow it reappeared again in a later version. I was like, "What the heck?" I
Yeah,
just
what
removed it.
region was that that had Applebee's? Anyone remember?
I forgot.
Yeah,
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 but it's
Yeah, it was
yeah.
Grand March, wasn't it? It was like
No,
somewhere.
it was in Ernst.
Oh, it was in Ernst. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh
the
my gosh.
county or the.
The great
yeah.
thing about a shared world project is everyone gets to participate.
Yeah.
Everyone
The tough
has
thing
to
about a
find-
shared
Yep.
world project.
Yeah, that's the problem
Everybody gets to
sometimes.
participate.
Wow. All right.
Yeah.
So let me see. We have had one or two other questions. Any questions from the audience? I'm sorry, from the panel for each other. As I'm looking again one more time because we're burning through here as far as speed. This is a fast chat tonight.
I don't know. I had a few notes, but I think we've managed to cover almost everything.
I
that
got one. I got one. If you all don't, it's a specific one. One of my favorite
Fire away.
characters. Of all the rest is Sharn. Whose character? It's got to be Carl's, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
He kills. He kills her. He kills her in From the Ashes. Did she die
Yes.
in your campaign as well?
Yeah. Yeah.
Ah,
Most characters end up dead.
okay, so that's
Yeah,
why.
yeah,
All
the-
right.
I think that might have even been the Sunken Temple one. That
Okay.
was very nasty indeed. But he used to run two characters at the time.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's cool. Oh, so someone else does
Yeah.
that in the world besides me. That's good to hear.
Yeah. No, he could cope with it, so he could keep an idea. Oh no. He could role play them both pretty well. I mean, that was the thing, that he had the attention to detail to be able to deal with both. So we always used to learn to have two. So
Okay.
keep him busy.
It's awesome.
Interesting, very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, to dig some stuff out in the games. Yeah, but then you don't want to give too much away because we might bring them out, the real things.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Well, we'd love to see. You know, I guarantee the community, and from what the audience is showing tonight, Rick, they want to have you back and have you participate when you can. I know real life.
Yeah, no.
Real
No,
life.
thanks for bringing me on because
Yeah.
it's been quite an eye opener. You know, it's lovely to see how things that you created on a winter's night all those years ago have actually had a life of their own since, which is fantastic, and that people have run with it and developed it, and these things have had a life of their own is just quite incredible. It's something you just never really imagined at the time. I mean, I always wanted to work in games. I started playing, a friend of mine's dad got hold of the original Brown boxes.
Oh,
And
nice.
So we were playing in about 1977 is when we started playing Dungeons and Dragons. And I always thought, oh, I could have a job doing this one day. You never actually thought you would. And of course, there you are. You ended up actually doing this, which was quite strange. And then, of course, you start writing stuff. And, I always wanted to write more. I always wanted to produce more. But the opportunity never came. So maybe now is the time to actually go back to doing it.
Yeah.
There's a community that will welcome you. I mean,
That'll
seriously.
be nice. Yeah.
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 I also
Oh
wanna
yeah.
s-
Oh, for sure.
I want to say this. Eric comes on whenever he's asked into this community, and he has other things going on in his life we all know about. And that I just want to say to Eric, man, it's really kind of you to come on so much. Thank you.
Whatever. Thank you. I mean,
Well,
you
I
just-
don't-
we got Rick on, and I'm like, I got questions.
Oh, it's lovely to meet you. I thought, oh yeah, because you see,
I thought I could tease Eric on,
Yeah.
You
onto
did.
the show.
I didn't even have.
Easy. Easy.
It was
You know,
easy.
I love
Actually,
your stuff.
I only had
When-
to ask once. I only
Come
had to
talk in
Wow.
a funny voice for 4 hours for charity. It's like you just know the
Yeah.
right way to reel me in.
But you have a new
So
best.
I've read Eric's stuff as well because I've been reading all the Pathfinder things and getting through that. And
There
go,
you go.
oh yeah, I like those. Yeah,
Cool, thank
that's
you.
lots of good stuff.
Eric,
Yeah.
you have a new best
Brilliant.
friend though now. I mean, Darling's
do.
Darling's character is like
Oh, yes.
you know, she loves.
Yes,
Yep.
very important.
Yeah.
I feel like a real like partnership was made. Moment in that
Awesome.
last game.
I'll make sure.
Um,
I'll make sure for the next fundraiser when we do. I guess we're gonna have to do puppets. I guess that'll be the next
I
one.
mean, I'm not saying you have to, but you kind of have to.
Yeah, exactly.
Because otherwise, it's Patriots.
We
to
raised
zero.
$8,000 over 2 streams between Blue Box and us. I mean, it was crazy, you know. So last year when we did Gargoyle, and we got to keep it going. We got to keep the fundraising going. But it'll be a couple months off. We got so much. Got to enjoy the summer first, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So final.
Um,
Go ahead. Someone gonna say something?
No, it's just I forgot to mention all the tournament adventures that we wrote for the various UK tournaments that we did. I've forgotten all about them. They'll have to come to light of day. They were Greyhawks.
Yes.
So
Wow.
yeah.
Were they Greyhawk?
Oh, they were Greyhawk. Yeah.
Yes. Come on here.
I'll dig them out.
Oh
find
my
them.
We have to
gosh.
have a whole show talking about them. And
Oh my gosh.
I feel like
Because
that
we
just-
used, we
from the
used to
fan-
organise a Gamescom here, which was at Reading University, which we used to do every year, and we used to have the big AD&D tournaments in there, which were written
oh
between me and
God.
Graham Morris, who wrote Night's
Oh my-
Dark Terror and things.
Yes. Oh my
There you go.
gosh.
so like so
Holy-
much.
Go ahead.
As a fan, it's like, oh, I wish that we could get a hold of Gary. Hey, Gary, where are all your secret notes? What's the big picture in Greyhawk? Well, there isn't one.
Oh my
Okay, how about
Yeah.
this person? What's the? Is there a there?
Yeah,
there?
we've
No,
got 'em.
not really.
We've got
Hey,
'em.
Rick, what do you got? Well, I got about 18 modules on.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Yeah,
wow.
yeah, probably.
Wow.
Oh, wow. This is so cool. Yep.
Got a lot coming up. We'll get it worked out. Dennis, Dennis is. Everyone say thank you to Dennis for getting this all set up. By the way, everyone. It
Yep.
was Dennis is
Yeah,
doing.
well done.
Dennis is the.
Well, Jay's been bugging me for like 2 years to do a City of Greyhawk
Yeah.
stream.
Yes,
And
I
I said,
have.
Not gonna try to pull it myself. I got to pull in friends.
You did,
Yeah,
but
well done.
you
Very
stepped
well
up.
done.
You stepped up with the update, and the update's fantastic. And
Yep.
note that the box set is a great starting point. The details in these books are unbelievable. Like I said, it is the best.
It was the first
Publication.
flavorful city ever created
Yeah.
for Dungeons and
It
Dragons.
was. It was. It was. Some may say hard.
Still
No.
the only. Can you guys believe it?
What's that?
Still the only flavorful city ever created. for D&D.
Maybe that might be being a little harsh.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
first
That's
one.
kidding.
Yeah.
Just-
I'm sure Pathfinder has lots of flavorful cities now.
Oh, yes.
Yes. They're
well, we
Especially
all just
Absalom.
try to
Yep.
do the best we can.
absolutely. So
But very much. I
Ideally,
think
with more
Eric-
than 48 hours of writing time.
Well, that's true too.
that is still
You got more than
unbelievable.
3
But I think-
weeks
I
to
think-
work on it. Yeah.
Eric's history in Greyhawk is you've really carried that type of flavor into the new campaign world and the new that's I see lots of connection there.
Well, thank you. I mean, we're all just a product of our inspirations and stuff. And for me,
Well, sure.
this is definitely a big one.
Oh.
It's a
Yeah,
cool
definitely.
opportunity.
So why don't we do
Wow.
some shout outs? Yeah, Rick, it's heartfelt and it's real, and that's why we were all so excited when Dennis.
That's very kind
told
of
me.
you. I'm
Yeah.
glad that it's had a life of its own and it's been received so well because, I mean, we were pleased with it. We were happy with it. It's a shame that we didn't do more. And obviously that's never going to happen now. But
Yeah, it's a shame Carl's gone.
yeah, we always thought we might get around to doing something else. We had all sorts of projects planned. We were looking at developing stuff in sort of magazine format and things. But we had a meeting in London probably about 10 years ago, but no, more than that, 12 years ago. But it's one of those things. Yeah, it's a shame. And then real world caught up the rest of us. So maybe now's the time to to come back.
Yeah.
It's interesting. This is just amazing that we now have this ability that obviously never existed then. I mean,
Yeah.
we didn't have a phone in that place where we lived. We had to
Walkie-talkie.
walk half a mile down the road to a phone box if we wanted to ring anyone. So if we had to ring up TSR Inc., we'd actually have to go and take all our 10-pence pieces and feed the phone like
Wow.
this constantly, or make a reverse charges call. So we had no phones, nothing. It was pretty basic. It was medieval. It really was.
It was a cottage industry, literally a cottage
Yeah,
industry.
yeah. It was
Yep.
actually it was a product of a lot of coffee and a lot of Irish whiskey.
Oh wow. Yep.
Nice. Why don't we do some shout outs, see what everyone's up to? How's that sound? Because I know we all probably have a lot of great things going on. So Dennis, what else you working on?
Well, this was it for the last little while, trying to get this finished. Something that I'd been dabbling on for years. You were the inspiration to finally do the big push to finish this, at least to a point where I could get it out. Obviously, it was always iterative. It'll continue to grow, and as I say, Anna and I have plans to expand and that, and
Awesome.
obviously
Yeah.
I would love to get in on get Rick to get some of his stuff out, and I'm more than happy to help him
We should.
and
Yeah.
provide
Yeah.
a home for his material if he wants
Yep.
it, and
Yep.
and that. But otherwise, yeah, real life is always crashing in, and I teach a course on top of my day job, which altogether that sucks a lot of time. But no, I'll keep plugging away at things, keep an eye out for updates slowly to come out over on the website. But
Well,
yeah,
told you
otherwise
that.
I just keep up with all you guys. It's hard to do.
Well,
Because that's the funny thing, isn't it? I told you about that, Dennis, is that strangely for a committed atheist and things like that, I'm actually involved in one of the
Oh,
major
yes.
religious programming in the UK now. I provide production services all over the place in cathedrals. And that's been brilliant. I've been working in the biggest cathedrals in the UK, and
Cool.
that's been very inspiring. Some of the things you find in there and the build and the structures where I think, oh, I can incorporate this. You know, this is really the Temple of St. Cuthbert.
Ah,
Like literally.
But yeah, so I've ended up, luckily, given the way the events industry's gone, I'm a production consultant to a program called Songs of Praise, which is a very long-running BBC program here, which is very amusing and very well paid too. So I'm quite happy about that.
That's great. Yeah.
that's
don't have to
fantastic.
be a believer to set up the equipment.
No, I do not.
Anna, what do you got going on?
Oh, it's tons, so to speak. And I have to apologize for everybody that it took a couple of weeks longer to get this out. But right now, thanks to the events in the world, I have a day job had a couple of weeks and probably have for
Oh,
another
wow.
month or so. But it's temporary, so and also this funny thing, I have a temporary day job, and the first thing I do is ask for a week vacation, and so I have to kind of work a week ahead and then kind of catch up when I get back home from GaryCon. So that was kind of, but I told them that I'm having it. But anyway, I've now finally released the 576 version, 2022 edition of the map, the Flanies and Hipponaland. It's out. To all my patrons, it's coming. I will release that on when I leave for GaryCon. It will be released for everybody, and it's an easy zoom JPEG and PDF, and the PDF is 1.6 gigabyte, I think. So it's a big one. It's over 40,000 pixels one way, so to speak. So it's a big one, but the easy zoom works really well, and it's kind of it's the final version, and there's no Applebee on it. I took way out. So it had to go this edition. And
Awesome.
also for my top tier patrons, there is the Illustrator file that I used for it. It's so people can make their own version of it already. And
Oh,
there is
really?
also 40 something new shields, more heraldry for my patrons that came today
Some are
as well.
scrolling through with mine down on there.
Yep. So there's a Jay got the bunch here too. So we up to 170, 180 shields or something like that. I've updated heraldry and added and stuff. And last week I had a bunch of heraldry for my campaign. that my mid-tier patrons got, and
Fraud
so
one.
more of that is coming out for everybody, will be released, and so on Friday evening I will release the full map for everybody to get the 2022 edition. And thank you everybody who helped me. I've had hundreds of people helping me over the years. I have over 300 patrons that helped me fund this project, and is going on, and it's kind of cool. And I will release to my patrons before I go on to GaryCon. I will release a bunch of future projects, and that will be one of the things that I will talk about at GaryCon, because there is I have about a 5-year plan on doing things, and there's a bunch of cool stuff I want to get into. And one that I spill the beans on to my top tier patrons is an update on the Blackmore area. So I've received a bunch of cool material and some good working partners on this. So there will be an update to the Blackmore area. So I want to kind of make a version of it that integrates Dave Arneson's campaign terrain and stuff, and then people can kind of go from there. So that's one of the things that I'm looking into. And there's 4 or 5 other cool projects of that dignity, or bigger, so to speak, that is coming. So there's a bunch, and the city of Greyhawk is there too in a few years time. I want to, because first you need to do research, and then you need to start planning, and then you need to start mapping, and so on and so forth. So it's a multi-year project to do that, at least a 3-4 years of project to do the city. But that's basically what's going on right now. Yep.
And I got something cooking too. So
Yep.
we're just waiting for some things to come back from
More city related too.
more
guys,
city related
Yep.
stuff.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
absolutely.
okay.
Eric.
Oh, this is the thing. We never had Patreon then, so this is
Yeah.
another thing which is really
Mhm.
fascinating.
What's going on in Paizo?
Well, my latest release is Absalom, City of Lost Omens. It
Oh.
is
I want to see that.
Nice.
I don't know
Wow.
how many pages it is. 400 page.
Oh my
book.
Wow.
About
Yeah.
300 NPCs and locations in the city. That's been the main. It's like the city of Greyhawk or Waterdeep for Pathfinder. So
Yeah, I want to get a hold
pretty
of that
fun.
actually. Saw that. Thought, yeah,
Yeah.
I'll have that.
it was a labor of love. Tons of freelancers worked on it. I took a lot longer than 2 days to write my part, for good or ill.
Amateurs.
And anyway, so that I'm very tired now after that, and I'm not doing anything. I'm writing an introduction for a book and a 400-word snippet of a Call of Cthulhu book coming up, I think. So that's a little life thing I'm excited to do, just to contribute to a friend's project for that game, which I've always liked as well. And then I'm going on vacation for a couple of weeks.
Whoa.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, I need to get the hell out of here.
Good to hear. Good to
Yeah.
hear.
Yeah,
Great to hear that.
looking forward to puppets. That's the big thing that's on my agenda. I
Yep.
know it's coming
Well,
in July.
we'll set it up
Venarian Board,
mid
Priest of
to
Ralachaz will repeat.
yes. Venarian Void will return again.
Like Freddie McCruger.
It will be.
Battle that has long been. foretold.
Christoph is asking if you're going to GaryCon. I'm assuming the answer is no.
No. I'm going to Gen Con this year. And then we're doing
Oh my
PaizoCon
God.
in May
Yeah.
here in Seattle. And that I think might, I don't know what else I'm doing this year, but I will
What's
not.
in
I've never been
Seattle?
to GaryCon. I'd love to go. What's that?
Paizo.
What's in Seattle?
PaizoCon, which is
All
a
right.
convention for our company that we used to do every year, but then the last couple of years we haven't done anything at all.
It's
So
an
we're
amazing
tentatively
convention.
doing
Yep.
that again this year, and trying to get together, gather safely at the end of May, and looking forward to that.
Surely.
And
Surely.
puppets.
And puppets.
puppets,
And raising
and
money
puppets.
and raising money for St.
Yep.
Jude again off puppets.
Mhm.
But yeah, we'll start setting that up, getting the crew together. That'll be my guess is end of July. Sometime in July. We did it last year. I'll look and see when it was the date. We'll try and keep it around the same date. So
Can't wait.
yeah, it'll be awesome. Eric, thanks for coming on. What
for having us.
a fun discussion. And Rick, what do you want to shout out, man? I know. Thank you for one of the
Yeah.
top 10 of all time streams we've had here. This has been great.
Oh, how sweet. How lovely.
Oh yeah, number wise.
Good
by
on Dennis,
far.
Well done, Dennis, for tracking me
Well,
down.
thank you
and,
guys for agreeing to
And,
help me out here.
I'd never imagined I'll be doing this, quite honestly, and it's reawakened everything again. I think I just miss
Good.
some of the development and the creativity behind it, and the fun that we used to have. And it's it's a bit sad in a way that that Carl isn't here anymore,
Yeah.
and he's not writing stuff. We're not bouncing ideas off each other, because we did a lot of that. and we played a lot of very good games and had a lot of good fun. So, and it's good that there is, there is a lasting legacy from there, and I'm so pleased that people are enjoying it. And thank you so much for inviting me on and getting to speak with people. It's been great.
Wonderful discussion. Let's do the giveaways. Like I said, you're going to get a Free City of Greyhawk reprint. My gosh, look at how thick that is, because it's 2 books together and all the maps. I wonder if the adventure cards are in here too. I guess they are. Yeah, they are.
Probably.
The adventure cards are in here too. The Dead of the Howling Hills, Far Quiet from the Swamp. Yep, they're all in there. Yeah.
Well, time for the Hopping Prophet.
Yes, another good. I love Washtree. And then also we'll do the second one. We'll do Against the Slave Lords, which gives you all 4 of them. So let me close this out. Last call. Hit that exclamation point drawing. If you're outside the continental U.S., work with me. We'll figure out something shipping wise, or we'll figure out a way to get you those. But it shouldn't be any problem here. All right, let me do these real quick. I'm going to close this out. Thanks, Troy. Thank you very much for the kind words there. Closing it out. Here we go. The winner is Cynican. Cynican, a regular there. Tell me which one you want, Cynican. I'm assuming you want. Well, I don't know. You may have both. You may have. Just let me know whichever one you want, and then the second winner. I'm waiting for him to say, "I'm here." Like Papillon. And Rob's on a roll. Phantom, my gosh, Rob, you're on a roll. Cynican, you just tell me which one you want, and Rob Phantom's going to get the other one. All right, so you just let me know which of the 2 you want, and Rob will get the second one, and then we're going to find someone to raid in to. I think we normally raid into Eric, we'll raid into our favorite ladies here. I alternate between Darling and Bones. It's Bones' turn tonight, so
I don't know how you'd pick.
they're both awesome, aren't they?
Roll the dice. Roll the
They're
dice.
both boon companions.
Yes, they're both wonderful people and wonderful people in the industry with us. So, did Syndicate pick? I missed it in there in that mess. Wow, on all this, congrats. All right, so wait a minute. Blue Book, yeah, you got it. All right, so I'll send Rob Against the Slave Lords, and let's thank you. We'll raid into them, and just remember. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. Give me 10 seconds. We haven't done this since the third show of Legends and Lore that we ever had. We're gonna do We're gonna revisit Knighthoods of Greyhawk on Wednesday nights, Legends and Lore. Okay. Thursday night we'll continue our adventure. All right. That is in the Free City Trouble in the Free City Arena. There you go. So I get to kill some people hopefully, and then Tim has ever mysterious Tim has a game Saturday morning. And that is his Rovers of the Baron game. He's going to be using Fantasy Grounds for the maps for the first time. All right, so there we go. So that'll add to that game. And I have not even gotten to setting up the pre-Gary Con Gabbin yet. So we'll figure that out. We'll figure that out probably during the week here. So that's it. All right, let's raid into Little Bones tonight, and we'll see you all Wednesday. Everyone have a great rest of the weekend. Thank you so very much. Eric, I got a question for you offline. Could you hang there?
I'm at your service. Sir.
Awesome. all right. Jay's gonna hit the wrong button here. Wonderful support tonight.
Thanks, everybody.
So thank you so very much.
Thanks, guys, for agreeing to come out and help me.
Yeah, what a wonderful discussion
Awesome.
here. Let me set this up here. Raid into. All right. Set up in 10, 9, 8, 7. Wow.
139.
140, 151, 153, 154 person raid going in. Wow. All right. See you all Wednesday night. Have a good one.
55.
Wow.
155. That's almost record. It's not far from.
Oh,